to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. And today is a special day because we're starting season 6. It's
The new season.
the year of the Dresden,
The
guys.
year of the Dresden.
Except we're only covering it for like half a year, but that's neither here
But
nor
we're
there.
coming back to it.
We're
So
coming back. It's a year that comes back and forth and back and forth. So if you're new to the podcast, welcome as we do a deep dive into Jim
the Dresden
Butcher's Dresden
Files.
Files. Laura and I have never read this book series before. This
Nope.
is our first deep dive into it. So welcome and
It
hope
will
you'll follow
be
along.
interesting. Hopefully
You
you
know,
all enjoy this because
our pain has to
yikes.
be for everything, for something.
Yikes.
uh it's been an interesting first third of the book. I'm only a third of the way
Okay.
through. So that's what we're covering today.
I have
Um
finished the book and
Laura is the person who reads ahead, and I'm the person who says, I still have my homework to do. We need to record this afternoon.
I'm usually
So
not the person working ahead, but I'm trying to be better.
no, we're trying to work a little bit ahead this year. So we're recording early,
Hannah's
which
getting
is
married
I
because
guess
she's in love and we need to not be recording at her wedding, apparently.
which
For whatever
Laura
reason,
adamantly disagreed with. She said, "Why
I
can't we
told her,
just
I said this
record
like
at the
immediately, like
wedding?
I would go live from the wedding. And Hannah was like, no, we're not doing that.
Let's not do that."
I don't want to record at the wedding. And so I was like, okay, fine. I guess we got to work ahead. So this is the result.
So welcome to our pod. If you haven't been with us previously, we're a podcast that does a deep dive into new book series one book at a time, just like I told you. And
Mhm.
before that, we say, "Hey, Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?"
So what was the last thing that I mentioned reading on here? I can't even remember. I'm looking at my
I
Goodreads.
I believe it was a manga. Uh,
Okay, so did I talk about Komi can't communicate?
I believe so. I believe that was the last
Okay,
thing we
so I read lots
discussed.
of those. They're cute and it's about a girl with severe social anxiety and I like them, but at the same time there are weird elements because like I mentioned, there was one of the volumes where it was like, we're all going to the community pool and water park. But you know what we'll have included in this? A rating of these young women in their swimsuits. It's like,
Mm,
that's weird. They're in high school. Let's not.
yeah, let's not do that.
But the aspects about the relationships that she's developing and working through her communication issues, I think, are well done and cute. I just don't know how I feel about like the over sexualization of these 15-year-olds and everyone being like, Komi, I want to see her in a swimsuit. I hope there's a nip slip and like kind
Ew.
of thing. Like this is weird. Too much. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's very much that kind of stuff going on in that series, which is strange.
Yeah, that's a little strange.
Yeah.
But,
So if that was the last one did I talk about Jade Shards?
you did talk about Jade
Okay.
charts.
Okay. So we are flying through here. Let me just mention that the Sphinx, the speculative fiction indie novella competition
Yes.
is now completed. There
Mm-hmm.
was a winner announced. A Sorrow Named Joy by Sarah Chorn was chosen as the winner. I was part of Team Before We Go blog
Mm-hmm.
during this competition, and I actually read and reviewed A Sorrow Named Joy. And so I was able to read the winner of the competition, and I will just say that that is an excellent novella. It's one that when I first started reading it, I was like, oh, how does this kind of get into? I had heard that it was a science fiction, and I was wondering as I was reading, like, how does this kind of get into the science fiction elements? But it's very much a beautifully paced novella that even in its few pages, it takes its time getting to the gut punch of it all and
Okay.
really sits with the characters and their mental health. And I think that the issues that were handled within it were very well done. Like the author didn't really speculate that X was bad or Y was a bad thing to do and didn't make villains out of the characters, even though they were doing some maybe ethically questionable things.
Okay.
And I really appreciated that. And I just felt like I've read another of Sarah Chorn's work, and I really feel like Sarah Chorn is an excellent writer in terms of portraying emotions and mental health in fiction. And the way that she does so is just amazing. So the fact that that novella won the competition, I was thrilled because I was like, this was an excellent novella. I'm so glad that people are recognizing this book. And I think she was like very shocked too when she found out that she won because she like woke up the next morning and had like all these messages
Oh,
like, congratulations. And she was like, I'm so glad that I'm like actually kind of getting some recognition for this work. Like it went like unnoticed for a long time, like a lot of my work did. And so I'm really appreciative of all the people that like put in a lot of time for this competition and did so much hard work to even just like make it because it's a new competition.
yeah.
A it was the first year that they did it and everything. So that was really cool to see that some of these authors are getting recognition that they deserve for a lot of their hard work, even the shorter pieces of work that do take time and take a lot of our
Yes.
energy and a lot of our emotions and a lot of heart are put into them. So it was really great to see a lot of these authors just getting some recognition. I'll also mention another favorite that I read that was one of the finalists, Dragon Meat by Angela Boord. I'm so
Oh,
interested in her other work now. Like I'm likely going to read Fortune's Fool at sometime this year if I can get to it because Dragon Meat was so good. And
good.
I really, really enjoyed that one. And it's a book that was dedicated to caretakers. And it's about a city where there's a food crisis going on and they're unsure how this girl is unsure how she's going to get food to her ailing father, and she's been caring for him. She has to line up caregivers for him and everything, and a mysterious stranger offers her food if she will help him with something.
Hmm.
And there's these dragons that have been plaguing the town for a long time and causing a lot of devastation. So there are people that are kind of offered up as food to the dragons to kind of keep them from attacking the city. And she's worried that she could become one of these dragon girls, that would be sacrificed
Yeah.
as food for them if she goes with this man. But she ends up learning that there's a little more to the story with the dragons and a little more to the whole
Ooh.
magic system. And there's more to her own family situation as to why her mom and her sister are no longer in their city. And I just thought this, like, for as short as this book is, the world building was great. Like, I was so interested, and I don't know if I don't know if Fortune's Fool is connected to this in any way, honestly, but I think they're like set in the same land.
Okay, that's pretty
So I don't
cool.
know if but I'm definitely interested in Fortune's Fool now because I was like, I, I was honestly scared off of it previously because it's so long. It's like 800 pages of
Oh my
Fortune's Fool.
goodness. Oh wow. I did not
But
realize
Dragon Meat
that.
is so good that I was like, I think I'm gonna read this soon because it was such an interesting world and like the magic that the way that it's intertwined into the story is really cool. And if I was just like going to pick one of the novellas, like sheer fun, like which one was a blast to read, and I'm definitely going to like jump into more of the author's work, easily Dragon Meat. Like
Oh, that's
that was
awesome.
the one that I really, really enjoyed. So I would definitely say check out more of the books that were involved in Sphinx. I read out of the finalists, I read 7 out of the 10.
Wow.
And
That's impressive. Laura worked really hard on this. I didn't get to be
it
as
was a lot of work,
involved.
honest. Like,
I did we kind of kept me a little bit siphoned off from this so that if I said something I wouldn't get Laura, like, Laura's
like
only allowed to say certain things, so I think I
I
didn't
didn't.
ask or check in as
I'm
much,
saying
but
stuff now, like sharing my opinions. These are strictly my own opinions. They do not
mhm.
reflect my team. Because the way that this is structured is that the team, each individual person that reads each book would review and rate the book, and then they do an average of the scores. So obviously, me sharing my opinions now, the competition is over, a winner's been selected, and my opinion is my own and does not reflect Before We Go Blog's team as a whole. Okay, I'm
Right.
just my singular opinion. But yeah, I think we both were like a little leery of like sharing too much information about
Hmm.
different books and the contests and everything. But I'd say of all the finalists I read, they like 7 out of 10 finalists, they were so, so good. I would definitely say pick any of the finalists up. I even the ones the three that I didn't read, like Shattered Spirits was one that a couple of other team members on Before We Go blog read, and they loved it. There were just so many really great novellas entered into this competition that I really hope that people go and check them out. That they were really good. But Dragon Meat was definitely one that I really liked, and I'm probably gonna pick up Fortune's Fool if I can get over my whole like 800 pages scares me
Yeah.
thing.
Hey, Mega May is coming up, Lord.
I don't know, Hannah. That when I have to dedicate to a theme, it's even harder for me for whatever
That is
reason.
very fair. A
I
lot
don't
of
know
people
why I
hate
work like
that.
that. But another book that I read recently, another novella, but I absolutely loved it. I don't know if you've heard of this one, Hannah, The Lies of the Ajungo by Moses Ose Utomi. He's a Nigerian American author,
Okay.
and this was a story. This is honestly one of the most haunting and beautiful novellas that I have read. I adored it, but it's very much a story of oppressors and the people that they oppress.
Mm.
And it centers around a city of lies. And within the city of lies, there is no water. And they're basically like given water allowances. And the people there live in like a desert city, basically. And every now and then, children usually, will go out and look for water to bring back to the city of lies. And the Ajungo keep the city of lies without water. They take the water away. And when the people in the city of lies turn 13, they have to have their tongues cut off.
Oh, wow.
And so when Tutu is like going to be 13 pretty soon, he's about ready to lose his tongue, and his mother gets really sick because she's obviously extremely dehydrated. He decides that he's going to go off into the desert and look for water and bring it back to the City of Lies. And when he goes out into the desert, he starts to discover all these things. And it's such a haunting and beautiful book. And the cover, I think, is really interesting because when you look at the cover of this book, it's almost like a big circle.
Yeah, I just looked
The
at
way
it.
that the way that it's depicted, but there's like a skyline of a city at the top with like a rising or a setting sun in the background, and which I'm assuming is the City of Lies. And then at the bottom, we have like an inverted image of a boy walking out into the desert.
Mm.
And I think that the way that that is depicted is so interesting because this story is told almost circular in its nature because I'm really on thin ice here because I'm trying
You're
not
trying
to
not to
reveal too
ruin it.
much
Yeah.
because I really want you to read it. Hannah, I would actually like really love to cover this book and
Okay.
its sequel because I think that it's so good. But it's like a folklore mix of like Nigerian folklore almost, and it's just so interesting and I loved it so much. I really want people to read it because there's not enough reviews of this. Like there's only 590 reviews on Goodreads. Like there needs to be more. Like this book is so good. And yeah, I really hope that people give it a chance. It's a short read. You can do it quickly, but I really find it so interesting in the way that it's told and how the stories are very much like you can see the different viewpoints
Okay.
like all it's so hard for me to explain without like giving too much away about this. But I'll just go back to the cover being
Yeah.
extremely interesting. That the cover and a circle depicted in the cover, and then also the way that the story is told in kind of like a circular way that things start at one point in the circle and you find your way back at that point
Interesting.
in the
Well,
story.
that's
And
a pretty good
it's fascinating and I really appreciate how creative this author was and how they really incorporated like a lot of just like the ways that societies can set themselves up for success while keeping others down and out of the loop by not giving them information, setting the narrative for them. And it was really, really, really well done. I'm kind of like it's one of those books right now. I'm kind of obsessed with it where I just keep like
Right.
thinking about it, you know? And I'm definitely going to be telling everybody that I know to read it because I'm just like it's a short book, like it's not a huge commitment, you know, like you can read it. It's no
Just
big
pick it
deal.
up now.
I told a friend the other day we were just chatting. I was like, "You should read this book. I know you don't really read fantasy, but you should check this out because it's so good. It's really short. Just give it a chance." It's really really good. I don't know if I've read any of the author's other stuff, but I think the second book came out recently, so
Okay.
I'm gonna have to pick that up because I
Run and
need
go
to
grab
get back
it.
in this world. This was one that was just like the library recommended it to me through the
Oh,
Libby app, and I was like, "Oh, good job, Libby.
yeah.
You know me."
That's awesome.
The next book is The Truth of the Aliki by Moses Osei Utomi. So these books need more attention, likely, because first one, superb.
Good
Superb.
to know.
And Hannah, I really want to cover them so bad. And they're not going to be a huge commitment because they're novellas.
Right.
So let's keep that in mind.
For Laura's next pitching season, she's gonna
Yes.
pitch this 2-1 and be like, guys, just
I'm
go for
I'm
it.
gonna
We can just
Laura
quick
gets
cover
three Laura gets three options and I'm like, okay, so we're already covering this one. That's just a given, but here are my other three options.
it. I don't even need to pitch it. I'm just gonna do a cutback to what I was talking about on the pod last time, so you
Yes.
all know why I'm obsessed with it. Thank you so much.
But yeah, if people see me sharing more about this book online, sorry, not sorry. It's good. Go read it.
She's not sorry.
Not sorry.
Not sorry at all.
Also, I read volumes 1 through 4 of Jujutsu Kaisen,
Okay.
and the author is Juju Akutami. I really like these. It's a manga series that is about a high schooler whose grandfather dies and tells him to don't die like me, like be
Hmm.
sure that you're helping people, like you don't want to have a death like I do. And he's like, "Oh, you have a nice death, like you had a nice death, like people that loved you were around you or whatever." And his grandfather's like, "No, help people. That's what you need to do with your life. Don't, you know, die in the way that I am." And so he ends up going to his school's like they have like an occult club and they had recovered this object and they find out that this object is actually like a cursed object and Itadori and he's part of this club and he comes across this person who is like, "Hey, I'm here to recover that object. You guys really shouldn't have it." And he's like, "Oh, well, they just took it somewhere else and they're going to open it at our next meeting." And turns out that this is like a severely powerful object that like controls or that like contains the cursed energy from like demons.
Okay.
And so chaos ensues and they are unable to recover it and there's all these other like beings that are using cursed energy that are appearing trying to recover this cursed object and ends up that in order to like save everyone Yuji Itadori is like, "You know what, I'll just eat this." So then it is out of play. Well, Megumi is like watching this and like there's only 1 in a million chance that he'll live on this. And of course he does live.
Of
And he ends up
course.
absorbing this cursed energy from this finger, which is one of the fingers of this demon, Sukuna.
Okay.
And so then Itadori and Sukuna are both like living within Itadori's like body as a vessel, but the trajectory of things don't go the way that you think they would go. And Itadori still has like the ability to kind of control his own body and not let Sukuna take over, which is interesting. And so they end up going to this school, Jujutsu Kaisen, where Itadori is going to learn how to control Sukuna. And basically, the school is like, we're going to use you to just get all of Sukuna's missing fingers. There's 20 of them. And we're going to get all of them, and you're going to eat them all and absorb all this energy. And then we're going to kill you to get rid of you so we don't have to worry about it anymore. And Itadori's like, I guess if this will help people. But the way that this is structured is like such a baffling and yet I can't take my eyes away from it story. Like things are so strange and sometimes you have to just like kind of roll with the punches and there's a lot of
Right.
action too, so sometimes literal punches. But things are happening so quickly and I'm just like I can't look away from it things are happening and even me describing all this, I'm like impressed with myself that I could describe all this because it sounds so complicated when I'm saying it out loud. But I really enjoy the characters. There's actually a character, uh, Satoru Gojo, who is so cool, and I really like him a lot. But he wears a blindfold over his eyes and everything. You've probably seen him depicted because this is actually an anime too that's pretty
Oh,
popular. I haven't
okay.
seen the anime, but just reading volumes 1 through 4, I'm really enjoying this a lot. And I really like these characters. They're super fun.
That's
Super,
good.
super fun. And then let me talk about something that I've been watching. Some of my new favorite little babies that are
Laura is having like a year of just
my
pure joy
new
when it comes to
best
reading, watching, and
friends.
enjoying. Like you've just loved everything.
I was thinking about this recently because I was like, I've had so many like books that I've read that I've been like 5 stars. Excellent.
Yeah,
And then I was like, I don't read anything bad, is what the thing is. I don't ever read bad books.
that's fair. I am reading currently a book I'm not enjoying, and I'm like, why didn't I just put this down? And it's because I want to rate it on NetGalley so that it's not sitting there unfinished.
Yeah. I think I have just gotten to a point where I will quit a book if I'm not feeling it.
Hmm.
And then if I'm not feeling it, obviously it's not going to make it to a stage where I'm going to end up giving it a lower ranking, you know?
That's fair.
So, but I also am just like very much enjoying a lot of the stuff that I'm picking up. And I'm just picking up a lot of good things at the moment, I
Yeah,
think, where if my ratings on things seem like they're all 4 and 5 stars, it's because I'm just really enjoying them and they're good. I'm just not reading anything mediocre at the moment or
Laura's
bad.
just picking so
So,
many good things.
but the show that I wanted to talk about, Hannah, I'm thinking about writing a blog post on it because I think it's such a well done anime. It's I think it's what you would call like a slice of life, but it's Kotaro lives alone or Kotaro lives alone.
Okay,
I don't know if you've heard of this, but
I have not.
it's an anime series about a little boy named Kotaro who ends up moving into this apartment, and his next door neighbor, uh, who is a manga artist, uh, was like, okay, what's going on here? There's a little kid living by himself. He's a kindergartner or
Hmm.
4-year-old living by himself, and uh, the artist that lives next door, Karino, ends up kind of talking to him, and you learn more about Kotaro, and the reason that he's living alone is that his parents have had some issues and that he unfortunately has not had the best life. And so you see Kotaro interact with the different people that live in this apartment complex and Karino, the manga artist, Mizuki, who is another person that lives there, and she like works at a nightclub. And then you also have Sir Tamaru, who lives there too, and he's like a divorced dad. And so the way that this show handles like really delicate situations and the way that we need to like be more aware of certain things that are going on in people's lives or just like kind of be on alert for something being up, I think is so well done. And I almost want to say that this show it's rated, I think, fairly low as far as like who should watch it, but I want to say that maybe it's a little too low or maybe it's appropriate. I don't know because it's a cartoon, but there's an episode where the people in the apartment complex notice that Kotaro is like putting on some weight and they're like, we're getting a little worried about him. He's put on a significant amount of weight in a short amount of time. And so they end up going to the school to try and figure out what's going on. And they find out that like all the other kids in the class, once they're done eating, they're giving all of their leftovers to Kotaro.
Mm.
And Kotaro's like, yeah, I'll eat them. And they kind of dig into why, uh, because originally they thought that like this was a nutrition issue with the school, that they were going to kind of like take it up with the school, like, hey, you need to have healthier options here.
But it's
But
actually a resource issue of resource hoarding for a kid who
yes,
doesn't have a
who a
stable.
kid who doesn't have a stable home, who
Hmm.
is like, I'm used to not always having a
Yes.
meal, so I cannot let this food be thrown away
Yep.
because there might be a point in time where I don't have access to food,
Yep.
so I need to eat it now. There's another episode which shows like a dentist who spends a lot of time, Kotoro's dentist, who spends a lot of time talking to the kids. And the receptionist is annoyed and is like, why did the kids' appointments take so long? And you hardly spend any time at all with the adults when we could be kind of like pushing through these appointments and
Right.
getting more money and making a little more money. And the dentist is like, here's the thing. I am able to recognize when children are being abused based on the care of their teeth and
Yeah.
the things that they're telling me that are going on with them. Like Kotoro's really improved, and it's really important to me as a professional to be able to take the time and talk with these kids and figure out like what their home situation is. But this is just such a beautiful like found family story,
Yeah.
and I love it so much. I think there's only 10 episodes, and I'm kind of devastated that they're not going to have more,
Oh, is
but
it like a one shot or
I
is it?
think I think the manga series might have ended, and so
Mm,
then they don't have anything else to work with.
yeah.
But it's so good, and I just think that there needs to be like more shows that are really just like kind of like chips that you can just watch like this and still like get really sensitive topics talked about, and also like there's still humor and heart in it too.
Hmm.
I just really love this show so much, and I want everyone to watch it.
Do you think it's a little bit like too low because of the like topics, or is
I
it the
think it's
way that they're
rated. I think
handled?
that the way that they rate TV shows, like I think it's rated for like middle grade and up or something. And
Okay.
which I I do think that it's important topics that middle graders probably do need to know some of these things. Like if you have somebody in your class that acts a certain way, this or that, to be cognizant of that. But at the same time, I think that maybe we're not rating animated shows properly,
That's fair. I mean, they do get away with a little bit more.
or that if it's because it's an adaptation, that it maybe wasn't translated the best. I don't know for sure, but I do think that just because there's like no like there's not violence or nudity in this or anything that would make me think that it needs to be rated differently, but just the topics
Mhm.
themselves can be pretty difficult because some of the things that happen in this, even though like it's not stuff that is totally out there, these things happen all the time. There were moments where I was just like, oh no, Kotaro. Oh,
Yeah.
and it's such a good series and kind of a comforting one to watch too, because they all talk through things and work through their emotions. There's issues happening with the side characters as well. Not everything bad that happens happening to Kotaro. It's not like Kotaro has the worst life in the entire world, but he is very much a child who's working to help others and learning about others and helping other people to learn about themselves. And it's just so sweet.
I was wondering because like I know it seems like there's a lot of in-depth topics, but like there were TV shows like that for us growing up, I felt like, like, and even before us, like this, there were like special Saved by the Bell episodes that were like to teach you about like unhoused people or like, because I specifically remember like I used to watch Saved by the Bell before I went to school in the morning. And there was like an episode where they talked about like a dad where he and his daughter were living in the car and he was talking about how he couldn't afford a suit to like get a job interview and it was like very 80s,
This
teach
very
you
much
how to
has
do
those
it.
type of vibes where it's like
Yeah.
the Boy Meets World episodes of it all,
Yeah.
where it's like Sean's dad is poor.
Yeah.
Uh,
And an alcoholic. Poor Sean, just like anything they ever wanted to do, they were like, what if Sean came from
Sean
kind
wore
of an
the same shirt
abusive
2 days
home?
in a row.
But well, and they like even pulled the like Boy Meets World because Boy Meets World got transferred over to Disney Channel, and they literally pulled the episode of Corey drinking a ton because it
Hmm.
wasn't and I do think we've kind of like not taken away too much from children, but I think sometimes we don't trust them enough to handle those types of deep
Yeah.
conversations, especially if it's done with care, like you're
I think
saying.
that this show is done with care, but at the same time, I do kind of, and you know what? I'm just going to throw all that out. I think if people are emotionally and like mature enough to handle these things, absolutely any age that you're mature enough to handle some of these topics, you should,
Yeah.
because these things need to be known by more people. And like, there's one point where it's right in the first episode where this guy who lives next door, Carino lives next door to Kotaro, he's like, yeah, these apartment buildings, we don't have showers in them, so you have to go down the street. It's over there to use the public bathhouse there.
Yeah.
So just go over there. And then he goes back into his apartment and he's like watching TV and he's like, man, there's been so many child abductions lately in this area. Why aren't people paying attention? And then
Oh,
he's like, oh my gosh, am I one of those people? I just sent a little kid down the street. And
yeah.
so it's like, yes, you are. So
Yeah.
like things like that, I think are topics that are brought up in this a lot. And you know what, I'm totally just gonna like throw out everything I previously said about like maybe this some of these topics aren't appropriate for little kids, because I think maybe people, if you're mature enough to watch a show that handles these topics, you need to be learning about like the situations that other people are going through.
Right. Well, at least if it's done with like care and like, oh, this can happen. And I was
Absolutely.
thinking about
It's a
like
very
the
kind
resource
show.
hoarding, like that is something that a lot of kids struggle with, especially
Hmm.
if they've come from like difficult houses where like I was listening to an episode of Maintenance Phase today, which is an
Hmm.
excellent podcast. But it was about a British like Food Network person pretty much who like for a while got famous of going into schools where like kids were having school lunches and talking about like how gross it was, and he would like try to revamp their entire system and was like not careful at all about the fact that like school lunches are government regulated, so it has to
Hmm.
have x amount of protein and x amount of like starch and like x amount of things to like give children a daily value. And that's a lot of what they're built on, so a lot of them have to come frozen, a lot of them
Right.
can't come fresh, especially when you're dealing with like budgetary constrictions. And he was always incredibly like tone deaf about what it
Yeah.
meant to be poor. And they said that like there was a difference between the British ones because like the British ones they were like shaming them a little bit, and like British media was very like anti-parent and those types of things. But then they came to America, and the American one kind of like fell a little bit flatter because kids were just more honest and like less polite about stuff. So he does like a thing in Britain where it was like, look at how chicken nuggets are made. Do you actually want to eat these? And the kids were like, no, that's gross. And then he came over to America and the kids were like, yes. And he was like, well, why? You just said that you know it's unhealthy. And one of the kids was like, well, I'm hungry. And I was like, you're not recognizing that like little kids will eat if they're hungry and if it tastes good. Like
Yeah.
I know that like I've had different family members and different economic statuses, and like we've talked before about like people would judge like how did they gain so much weight? And I'm like, well, Hamburger Helper is really cheap and
Yep.
it's able to be bought in bulk and it is high calorie, and that is what
Yep.
they have. And like if we
When you have
stop,
access, like my mom has talked to me about this like multiple times, like the way that she was raised, like they didn't have the most money, so they had to, and they had a big family, so they had a lot of meals that were like meat, potatoes, bread, what things
mhm,
go far, what can
yep,
feed a lot of people and like fill people up,
yep,
noodles.
hmm,
So things that are cheap, things that we can make a lot of. And like you and I would be like, oh, like hamburger helper, that's not the healthiest for you. That's a lot of salt and everything. They have to look at things from like people in general
how
who
far is
have
this gonna
to,
go?
yeah, have to look
Like,
at things like how far will this go?
hmm,
How many we can get several hamburger helpers, or we can spend an outrageous amount on like fresh vegetables. And
that might go bad if we're not gonna
yep,
eat them
if
all.
we
And
can't eat
like,
them right away. And I do see a lot of like people online, nutritionists that and dietitians that are saying, hey, like quit knocking people for eating canned vegetables, because if they're eating vegetables, they're still getting vegetables in. Like
yeah,
quit knocking people for that. Like no shame, do not food shame people. We don't
right.
know the different economic disparities that are occurring with people, and
Well,
some
and
people
you
are trying their hardest and cannot literally afford fresh fruits and vegetables because they're so expensive, or they don't have the time to make things because they're spending time doing other things trying to live.
And like we have this weird thing, and like they made a good point on the podcast that was like, and not to bring this all back to food, about a show that sounds like it's excellent and deals with more than just resource hoarding.
It's
You mentioned
definitely more
it.
than just resource
Yes.
hoarding.
I you just said this and it made me think of, tangential, but they said something that like stuck with me, which was like they were talking about how food is one of those things where it's like a thing you can splurge on that makes you feel happy in situations where you might not be able to say like afford a $40 movie night with all of your kids.
Yep.
You can't always afford that, but you probably could buy them some ice cream. And then you're like, that's why kids resource hoard is they like learn that food is a luxury that they
Yep.
don't always get, and so then they start making sure that they have it at all times, and they like there that happens in the real world, and like these things happen to kids. And I do think it's good to have this, like you're talking about, where it's showing kids how to look at that empathetically and to
Hmm.
recognize what's happening, that something psychological might be going on,
Yes.
and we need to handle that more than we need to handle like a kid is getting fat.
Yep.
um
And
and
I
yeah,
think that just in general, this show handles topics with a lot of empathy, like you were
yeah.
saying. That's the best way to put it, is that the topics handled are done so with great empathy, that there's a variety of things going on with different people. And like there's another little girl who wants to go over and hang out with Kotaro at his house all the time. And they can't figure out why she wants to come over because she doesn't actually like Kotaro. You know, she seems bored when she's over there. Well, they ask her and she's like, "Oh, well, my mom wanted me to come over here."
Mhm.
Well, the mom had her reasons for wanting the daughter to go over to Kotoro's because she's kind of ashamed by their own family situation and kind of wanted the kid to hang out with Kotaro to be like, it could be in his situation. He's got it pretty bad,
Jeez.
kind of that thing. And she was also struggling too with things going on in her life. But uh it's very much a show that like handles things with care, where like Kotaro doesn't get upset that he's kind of being used in this
Yeah.
situation. He's like, no, I get it. Like I totally understand that that's why you would want this to happen, but at the same time is also in situations where he's like, why would you do this, and he's not obviously an all-knowing 4-year-old, but
Right. Yeah.
it's a show that very much is compassionate to the characters and handles issues with care and a lot of heart. And I really
Huh.
appreciate that because, and I think when you're getting back to like, oh yeah, there's certain shows that I remember growing up that were handling. I don't remember cartoons as much
Yeah.
handling like animated shows handling this, but I think it's because I was not maybe as into. I definitely was not watching anime. And
Yeah.
so I don't know if this was the case for other animated, like other anime, but like animated shows in the United States, like cartoons I remember watching, like we're definitely not really covering this that I can recall.
I don't remember I mean, I did not have cable growing up, so like Cartoon Network, never heard of it when I was little, but I
Hmm.
remember those being like, my mom thought Cartoon Network was universally trash because she didn't
I
appreciate
never
any
really
of
watched Cartoon
yeah.
Network.
Uh, and I mostly watched like Friday or Saturday morning cartoons like
Yeah, I remember.
Recess.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's.
Yeah.
I remember watching Recess and like Doug and Pepper Ann, but somebody's gonna come at me now and be like, actually, Doug handled a lot of.
I heard that as told by
Really? Yeah.
I heard that as told by Ginger had a lot of good stuff that like still holds up
I
today.
never watched that.
I never watched it, but apparently like her parents are divorced in it, and her mom and the dad is pretty absent, and they handle it with like very good, like, hey, this can happen. And it's not like there's an episode, apparently I saw this on TikTok, where like her mom and brother have to be quarantined for the night,
Hmm.
and she's really disappointed because her dad was supposed to be coming to this recital, and it wasn't that he was coming, but he said he would try, and she like gets her hopes up. And then you see her mom sending her flowers from the hospital room from her dad. And then at the end of the night, she like calls her mom and she's like, "Oh, I hope you're doing well. And thank you for the flowers." And it's like a
Oh.
heartbreaking moment where you like, and where everyone, like little kids, are like, "Oh my
Hmm.
gosh, isn't that so wonderful?" But like as an adult, you're like, "Oh, she's a smart enough kid to know like my
Yeah.
dad would not have sent me those." And
Yeah.
it's like, "Oh, that's pretty." And it apparently like the cartoon goes into like her best friend next door. They start dating, and either before or after, he gets like incredibly attractive and he joins the football
Mm,
team. And during that time, like he starts being interested in different things and he ends up
mhm.
like breaking up with her, and they're like childhood best friends going through a breakup.
That's nice.
And she's like, well, like I can keep trying. And he's like, no, you don't like what I like anymore. And like, that's
We like
okay.
different things.
But we can't be together if we don't like support each other. And like, I can't keep doing this, feeling bad that like you're coming to my games and you don't like them, but wanting you to come to my games because you're my girlfriend. And it's like, that's actually
Hmm.
pretty mature for little kids to see, of like
Yeah,
two kids in high school having a moment where they're like, no, we can't be together because we just, yeah, you're right, we like different things and that's okay, but it's not okay to like hurt each other by not
right.
supporting each other. And I'm like, well, that's nice. So I think they were there, but they're few and far between.
And
And I was,
also, like, I was born a long time ago. People are, I hope I haven't opened a can of worms here that now people are going to be like sending us all sorts of messages. Like, actually, the following episodes of these cartoons handle difficult topics. Like,
we're
I,
not asking to be
I'm,
corrected. If you're
I'm
interested in
not,
like, oh, actually I loved this TV show growing up, that's fine. But
that's
like
fine.
we're not
But
asking for saying no TV show had value.
yeah, I'm being very general here. I do not remember, honestly, when I'm saying like I don't remember Recess having that kind of stuff. I remember it
Um,
being a lot of kickball and stuff like that and heist type situations.
I
But
remember that I remember the episode where you found out Spinelli was actually named Ashley Spinelli and she had to join the group of
yeah.
Ashleys.
I remember
That
when you found out
is
that Mikey was like an opera singer.
Oh yeah. And then he like sang opera in all the episodes, and you were like, why
Yeah.
was this some big secret? He seems to be singing all the time.
Yeah, like, why was that a hidden secret?
um
Or like Hey Arnold, the Helga was like stalking Arnold all the time.
well, I
And then
have
she
actually
herself
seen
had a stalker.
I know. Well, I did see that like someone was recently breaking down like why Hey Arnold is a pretty ahead of its time one. But again, we were kids when we were
I
watching it.
again, I am just gonna
No,
people
no,
give
no.
me a little
I'm
credit because I'm
I'm
saying
not
I don't
blaming
remember that kind of
Laura.
stuff, and I really do not remember that kind of stuff because
This is
I
random
was
stuff
young.
I see on TikTok
I was
because
9 years old.
they talked about how Hey Arnold was all inner city kids and they're all dealing with like different economic things and stuff like that. And they actually did deal with it a lot. Like Helga's mom, if you rewatch it, is like obviously coded alcoholic. And her dad is like verbally not good. And they talk about like they're like how she's a neglected child. And so they talk and like how like, children of neglect can tend to,
Well,
have
like
certain
obviously
reactions.
Arnold lives with his grandparents and
Yes. And someone once pointed out, like, yeah, Arnold's parents were the villains in that. Why would you leave your small child to
mhm.
like go across the country? Um, but like, yeah, he lives in a boarding house with his grandparents, where like that's obviously
Yep.
how they make their money and stuff like that. And there was like an episode in from one of the boarding house people where like he gave up his daughter during Vietnam to like save her,
Mm.
and like goes on and finds her later in life, and she like thanks him and talks about the family she like lived with and grew up with, and like it's a very sweet episode apparently. So I don't remember any of those
I don't
episodes.
remember those, but
Yeah.
also I
uh
was very much like not watching entire seasons of shows when I
no.
was a little kid. Like I don't remember ever like being able to watch an entire season, like all the episodes of anything until I was like
Mm,
in college.
yeah.
That was just
I
kind of how my life worked. So I'm hoping that I didn't open a can of worms with this when I was like,
no.
we don't make shows, never used to make shows like Kotaro Lives Alone. But I
This is Laura's first experience with it. That's what we're gonna say about it. This
that
is
I
Laura's,
remember.
yes, that she remembers. um but no, I
And I
was like,
think it's
oh,
really
I
well done. I want more people to watch it because these are little angel characters that I
Oh,
love.
that's good. No, I
Hannah,
usually open a can of worms in my brain where I'm like, oh, I'm on a weird side of TikTok right now where it's just showing me like deep, meaningful cartoons. And you were like, I don't remember any of this. And I was like, I actually didn't watch any of these, but I know about them. I was stuck watching Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd Century, a
hmm,
cartoon where Sherlock was frozen in like Disney style. He was frozen
okay,
and they bring him back because it looks like Moriarty is there, and he has an android that's similar to Watson and programmed with all Watson's thoughts. That is a real cartoon that
okay,
existed. And I watched
cool,
a lot
cool,
of it before I
cool.
went to school in the morning.
I
And
remember like Scooby-Doo. That was, I think,
oh yeah,
Cartoon Network, honestly. I like Scooby-Doo.
I was mostly a Disney princess kid. Like I had lots of
I had
movies.
lots of Disney movies,
Yeah,
which like my
same,
VHS collection was like outstanding. But I watched a ton
same.
of Disney movies, and then like you said, like Saturday morning cartoons. I remember watching like Recess and stuff like that.
Yeah, but that's about it. And Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century. So,
Hmm.
if anyone remembers that at me, because I think I can still sing the beginning opening lines to that theme song.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sing it now.
Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century. Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century.
Is that
Uh,
all the words? Like,
I forget if there's any more, but I remember like
oh,
that is
okay.
a very specific chorus to it. And I
Okay.
also remember that oh my gosh, who's the detective in that? Not the detective, the police officer. Anyway,
Mm,
um
I
the
didn't
like
watch that show.
the original police officer who like is always mad at Sherlock for like upscaling him. Oh my gosh. Sh- oh god, I can't remember his name. Oh, Lestrade. Lestrade, his like ancestor is the one who brings
Okay.
Sherlock back. So it's like all the same
All
characters,
connected.
but it's all connected. Um, what a weird cartoon. Okay, anyway,
Hannah, I went on for so long.
that's okay.
What
We only
if,
have to go 9 chapters in these books. So
oh,
we actually get
okay.
to go a little crazy with this series
Wow.
because like
Wow.
we're only covering 100 pages. This is
Owen
new for
Wilson.
us.
Wow.
I almost texted you and I was like, we could actually do like half and half in themes and characters like we did with
But I think the
Murderbot.
books get longer. Let's not be
Yeah, and
hasty.
let's not be hasty and like let's just let it happen. Like let's just
Let's
vibe a little.
chill with
Um
Harry Dresden.
yeah, let's
But
just have
Hannah,
a
what have you
little
been
nice
reading
time.
and watching?
So, for reading, I have been on a actually reading books Laura recommends me kick, uh, which never happens, everyone. We recommend each other books all the time, and the other one does not read them. So, this is brand new and different for us. We've talked a lot about it. I don't know how much we've talked about it on the podcast. I can't remember if we talked about it too much last week, but I did read Tender is the Flesh by Augustina Besterica. Besterica. I don't know why I fumbled the bag on that one so much. This is one that Laura recommended to me because she was interested in my thoughts. I thought I owned the novel. I actually owned another short story of Best Turka's work. So I did go out and buy Tender is the Flesh with a $50 gift card that I had for my birthday at Barnes and Noble. And I read it. It's a horror novel. Um,
It's like a speculative horror novel,
yes,
which most horror and science fiction I would say are speculative, but
it takes place in the not so distant future where animals have all been contaminated with some kind of disease. And instead of becoming vegetarians or choosing any other source, people start eating people. Um, Soylent Green style, which is referenced in the book, which I thought was funny, where they were like, "Oh, have you heard about this movie that they took off everywhere because they didn't want people to think it's a horror film when you eat people?" This was a very strange novel because it's like told not too long after the disease happened. Like we go
it's
straight to
really
eating
recent.
people really quick, apparently. Um,
Which keep going, Hannah. Okay.
no, and it's kind of like it's about this man who works in a factory where they butcher people, what they call
It was
heads, because they have to dehumanize them. And they're people
yeah,
who
it
like
was previously it sounds like a animal handling
processing
facility,
plant. Yeah.
and now because they had the setup, it they can handle the new form of
And
meat.
they're quick to like transfer, like make sure people can't say any words. Make sure they like get dehumanized in every single function so you know the difference, like you're branded.
Yeah,
Um,
no names. The
and there are certain things that like play a lot with like, oh, well, we may eat these dehumanized husks of people in our mind, but like we don't turn them into slaves. That's one step too far. Um, and I would say I don't want
but
to
we can
ruin,
hunt them.
but we can hunt them. And I don't want to ruin too much, but like it's definitely a look into like classism with like what it looks like because it like these
But I
things are.
wanted more from that because I saw a lot of reviews, honestly, on Goodreads where people were like, I will never eat meat again after watching this. And I was like,
I didn't
here's the
get
thing.
that.
That's not the takeaway that I got from this, where if people become vegetarians or become vegans from because they took away the way that we're treating animals in this is bad, I understand why. But at the same time, I felt like this was a broader look at the way that our class system is set up and how quickly we
Yes.
will subject those with less privilege, people of color, the poor people in our
Hmm.
societies, and turn them into a source of food
That's
or
legit
pleasure.
how I also read it. Laura and I both got the same takeaway from this, which is just very much this is how we dehumanize people very quickly in our society.
And when you
Um,
said that it's in like the near distant future, but like the jump to like eating people happens so quickly, I'm like, yeah, and it makes sense to me because people are very quick to just be like, you know what, I can't live without a burger. I'll
yeah.
do anything. I don't care. I'll fine. And they don't care if you sell it to them in a pretty package. And it made complete sense to me that it would be so quick that it wouldn't really be that much of an argument.
And it really isn't an argument. And I did think like I really think the author was effective in a lot of ways at showing like the horror elements of this, like of how we treat people, how we dehumanize people quickly. Um, and like there are parts of this book where like the main character is seen as a little bit more sympathetic towards like small animals than to the people he's slaughtering. And like there are just certain waves of that. And I thought it was really interesting to see how often she was able to use things like, hey, look at look at these people who are being terrible, but also they really love like this thing or they really enjoy this thing. And look at how like how human they can be in one moment and just like don't give a crap about anyone else in the next moment.
I will also say that there are some depictions of people in this that are absolutely horrifying,
Hmm.
but I think that they were well written. But I also don't want people to walk away from this book thinking that the main character was somewhat of a good guy at points because I don't think that I ever got that vibe from him that he was a good guy. And I think maybe because we get more of his POV, that some readers were like kind of maybe feeling like, oh, well, he feels disgusted by all this. And I'm like, if he was that disgusted, he wouldn't be taking part in these things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's never really a good guy. The way that I'm just going to throw it out there. There's a twist that happens, and the way that people perceive the main character changes.
Hmm.
And up until that twist, I think that people had this perception of the main character that he was somewhat of a good guy, that, just is in a bad situation, has to be involved in this, but he really doesn't like all that's happening. And I'm like, I never got that vibe. I always felt like if he was truly disgusted and bothered that much by what was happening, he would take some action. He would not participate.
So I think that that's a little bit of the author's intent is to make you kind of like feel bad for him or make you think like, well, he may feel bad for this, he may do this. But Laura is and like we're trying not to ruin it. We're not going to ruin the twist or anything like that, but like I we will ruin that like I don't think you're ever like I had moments where I was like I think the author wants us to think that like oh, I feel bad for this person or oh, he's not totally on board, but I also always felt a little bit suspect of him. There was just moments where I was like, this book can't work if he's a good guy at the end of all of this. Like, what's happening can't happen unless like there's some severe like horribleness to him, and everything he does is very like self-serving throughout it. It's very much like I'm a good guy energy, when he's still someone who like passes alarming judgment on others when like his
Yes.
job's a certain way, like his
And
job
he's
is
hiring people for this job that he's
Mhm.
like judging the people that come in, which sometimes they're awful.
Yes.
But at the same time, he's kind of taking a holier than thou
Mhm.
stance when it comes to other people in this world, and it's like,
And it gets and he definitely reinforces class in a lot of this where it's like well if
yes,
someone has money and they're doing these things
it's
he
fine.
it's fine, he has to do his part even if he finds it repugnant. But the second someone who is in a lower socioeconomic
Hmm.
status does something, he is horrified by it, he thinks
Repulsed.
that they're awful. And it's almost like a and I get it from a sense of like sometimes people, if you're in an oppressed group, usually you're supposed to be more sensitive towards that.
Hmm.
Maybe that's where it's supposed to be coming from. But a lot of times it felt more like he was okay with it when he had to be. And that was
Yeah.
when anyone with money wanted to do it. And
Yeah.
that's also like there is a group of people who scavenge for these people. And they're kind of seen as like, well, uh they're just obsessed with meat instead of they're probably starving. Like, and it's just the way we treat people that goes back to like Laura and I talking about resource hoarding. People who do not have food will do anything for food. It is needed. And so there was just a lack of empathy and sympathy towards anyone who wasn't him or his own experience.
I'll also just throw it out there before we get totally off of the discussion of this book, but I am just going to throw it out there that uh, I felt very ick about one of the portrayals in this book, and I just really think that there needs to be better representation of this specific group, and there is not very good. I can't say anything because it will reveal what the twist is in this book, and I don't want to do that to people because if somebody's interested in reading this, I don't want
It
to
is a big
spoil
part
it.
of it, but
It's a big part of it, but I will say that I felt very uncomfortable by the way that this was portrayed because I feel that this group is often kind of made out to be villains, and I felt that it was pretty uh, in lacking nuance, and I didn't appreciate that.
and I think it's this is a hard like it's hard because I do think that this is a horror novel and a lot of times like certain things in horror novels are supposed to be a little bit more on the nose. They're supposed to be, but it's like, well, we need it's the old adage of like certain trends shouldn't be shown in television until they're handled more deftly. Like you can't do certain things anymore because we haven't progressed into a point in our society where
Yeah, I
making
wouldn't even
certain
say it's on the
comments are
nose. I would just say that it's more like you're saying that I don't know that we are handling the situation with enough care because we don't have enough people in society that fully understand what this situation and what this group of people go through.
yeah. And I think I'm talking more in general when it's like there are certain jokes you can't make towards people of color right now because
Hmm.
we haven't progressed to a point in society where that's allowable, where you like there are certain conversations we can't have yet until we've progressed to a certain point. And so sometimes when you're dealing with that stuff in books, it can seem a little bit it's almost like it's too soon to make that type of, plot point.
I
So
think with the specific thing I'm referring to, it's too soon because society has not progressed enough to give these people the benefits and health care that they need.
mhm,
So that's why I feel very much uncomfortable with the way that this situation is portrayed in media in general. And I kind of didn't appreciate the way that it was portrayed in this book because it kind of perpetuates a lot of stereotypes of this
mhm,
group of people. And it's almost like when you see another horror book. This is a different example, but along the same lines, where you see some horrific character and they're disabled
yeah,
because that's the scariest thing that could happen is that
right,
somebody be disabled. This book does something similar with a bad stereotype because it thinks that the most horrific thing that could happen is this,
yeah.
and it makes it really bad, and it made me feel very icky. But again, I just think that it needs to be a societal change so that people don't see these things like this anymore and that they're handled with more care and nuance and that we're giving people the health care and support that they need in
Right.
these situations.
So I think it's like overall, I liked the book, but I think there are some like just I didn't know overall how to feel about it. But it's a horror
I didn't
novel,
rate it
like
because I didn't know how to feel about it because I could go 5 stars and explain all the reasons why it's a great book for discussion, or I could go 1 star because I had a lot of issues with specific things in it.
mhm.
So I just decided, you know what, I'm not going to rate this, and I think that's fine.
But I do think like yeah, it's a very effective horror novel, despite the fact that it uses harmful tropes. So, um, yeah, but that's the first book that I read. The next one, another book. recommended by Laura, Nimona by N.D.
Love
Stevenson.
that one.
Uh,
Did you watch the movie
I
too?
not yet. It's on my
Okay.
list of things. But it was very cute. I loved it. I love Nimona so much. Um, she, he, they, whenever she chooses, because she's
Mhm.
very fluid in all of her
Yep.
things. I thought she was so adorable. I loved how much she just wanted to murder people. I
When Nimona
love
just
that.
becomes a shark out of nowhere, like I love it.
And she's just like, ha ha ha. And I love like,
Yes.
I thought it was really effective storytelling. I love the mix of like older, like medieval things mixed with like
Hmm.
new technology
Yeah, it
and
was
the
like
way
sci-fi, but also fantasy, like medieval.
it was very cute. And I loved how much like Blackheart is so sweet and wants to just
Hmm.
follow rules and just like everything in
Golden
between.
Line,
Golden Loin, why is his name that? That is hysterical.
amazing.
Um
I also just
and
really liked the art in that because it seemed so simplistic that it was
yeah,
just fun.
it was a very fun book, so I'm glad that I read it. It was a very good YA graphic novel series. So can't wait to watch the movie because I think that that'll be very cute as well.
Yeah, you'll like it.
And then another one that you recommended
Oh
that I also
no.
watched the TV series for Percy Jackson and the Olympians #1, The Lightning Thief.
Yay.
So I binged the entire first season right after I read it because I've been waiting to watch
Yeah.
it until I read the book. I remember a lot of these books. I don't know. I think it's one of those
Did you
things where
read them
like
before?
so I didn't finish.
Okay.
This Hannah is famously someone who would pick up boy books and say this is a boy book and stop reading them.
Okay.
Because I was raised in a very feminist household where we mostly
Hmm.
just read female things and thought they were amazing. Have I watched all many seasons of Young and the Restless? Yes, but I had never read Percy Jackson like
I
anything.
hadn't read Percy Jackson either. I don't know why I hadn't done that,
Um,
but reading as an adult, I was like, oh, I would have loved these as a kid.
they're very cute. I remember I think I got to the point where Sidon named Percy as his son.
Hmm.
And for some reason, I was like, that happened really soon. I think I'm less interested. And I just stopped reading.
Well, that's spoiler.
Oh, I'm so sorry. No
No,
one
I'm
knew
just kidding.
that.
I'm just kidding.
Um,
No, that
but
that you had a spoiler, like the book
yeah.
spoiled the ending
Oh,
too soon
yeah.
for you.
Like I was just like, it happened too soon. Like I knew before that. And so I think like when I got to that point, I was like, I don't know, this feels like a boy book. So I just stopped reading it.
Gotcha.
But it was a good time. I mean, I listened, it was an audiobook, so I listened to it.
Hmm.
There are so many things where I'm like, when I was young, did I know the twist? Because this was a pretty easy twist if you think about it at all, where I was like, oh, okay,
Well,
I
when you're
know
in
what's
your
about to
30s, it's a
happen.
really easy twist.
Yeah, I know, but I'm like, well, but I do think it's very cute. I asked
Like,
my
would you
sister,
know it at 9? I don't
yeah,
know.
I asked my sister if I could buy it for my 7-year-old nephew, if she thought like it was appropriate. I asked her to like look into it to see if there's
Hmm.
anything that made her uncomfortable because I do think like he would really enjoy these books.
Yeah.
I think they're very good. I really liked the updates they made in the television series. I thought that they did a
Yes.
very effective job of adding and not detracting from anything.
And
Um,
I give Rick Riordan so much credit because he has had to get a lot of pushback from people on choices that were made in that series. And I think he has done a great job just being like, look, we're progressing with the times. We have to update things and we're choosing the
right.
best people for the roles. We're making the changes that need to be made in order to
Hmm.
get the story across.
Yep. And I like obviously
I
I
thought the
there's
TV here's my I'm not I kind of want to cover this for TV Tuesday at some
yes,
point,
I know.
so
So
I
I'm
won't
not going
say
to talk
too much
into too
about it,
much of
but
it.
I will just say that I felt like that TV show adaptation, this is not a spoiler for our TV Tuesday, but it was extremely well done. Like
Yeah.
the TV show, I was like, this is better than the books almost
Also,
because it's so good.
it's so good. It adds so much like dimension to a lot of characters that I felt like were pretty
Hmm.
one note in the books. And
Yep.
obviously like
Well, it's a middle grade.
they're middle grade books. They're meant for younger
They're
audiences,
meant
so
for
there are going to
9-year-olds.
be more self-insert characters, those types of
Yeah.
things. Um but I thought like they definitely added to it. I liked that Percy had more knowledge about the Olympians because like his mom taught him. I'm like, oh yeah, that
Yeah.
makes more sense.
Yep.
I thought like the discussions about parenthood was very
Hmm.
important. And also like good job Rick Riordan for being a little bit less precious and letting it like update for the times.
Yes.
And then, for anyone who was racist in their criticisms, like
Right.
go jump off a tree, like and like touch
Well,
grass,
because
like
honestly, Annabeth in the show was fantastic.
right.
She was so good.
There is a person I follow on TikTok who does like there's a sound about a Naruto character. I think it started from someone like cosplaying as her, and a lot of people freaked out because it was a black character. And someone made a song called like Hanada isn't black, Hanada isn't black, and then it goes, she gonna be black today, she gonna be black today. This creator who I follow on TikTok is black, and she like had it where it was like Annabeth isn't black, and it's like she gonna be black today. And I was like, yeah, exactly. Who cares?
Love it.
Like, yeah, that's exactly the energy I feel about this. Like, yeah, she is. Who cares? But and I loved oh, I can't remember their what's the little boy's name with the G?
Grover?
Grover. I loved Grover. I thought he was so
Yeah,
cute.
Grover was so funny
He
too
was
in the
so funny.
show.
I loved how many times he was
That
like,
was a
I'm
great casting for the
24.
main trio.
Like, I'm 24. Also, like,
I also
who
just appreciated like Percy in that show that they cast someone who was appropriately aged.
aged?
Well, all of them were appropriately aged. We didn't have to like have all sorts of boob shots of Alexandria Daddario where it's like
Who is
Annabeth has
always
cleavage and is dumb, and it's like no, she's
I'm
not.
sorry, Alexander Dario, she is my Roman Empire, where I constantly think about all the different things she has played, where it's like, she's
Mhm.
12. No, she's 25. And I'm like, she was never cast age appropriate. What were we doing with that actress
Uh,
that we made
what are
her
we
do all
still
of those
doing with her?
things?
Because sometimes she's cast as like a 40-year-old, and then other times it's like, no,
I'm
she's a little
I'm an
girl.
ingenue. Like, what are you talking about? I
So I take it
cannot.
you did watch the Percy Jackson movies.
I never saw them. I because
Oh,
like
okay. You just
again,
kind of you gotta watch those. Oh my gosh.
well, that's the thing is like I didn't want to
Force
because
yourself to because they're really bad. But I need you to now because you need to compare to the TV show to see
but
the
here's the thing, like
differences
I
in the
remember
adaptations.
how young they were supposed to be. And even with that movie, like I was a huge Logan Lerman fan. And I just remember
Oh, I
seeing
still like
Alexander.
him. Yeah, I
I
actually like all those actors.
but I
I
remember
just think
seeing
it was bad
Alexandra
casting.
Daddario, and I was like, I can't watch a show where she is supposed to be a teenager. Like
No,
she the movie how old was she when that movie
I
came
don't
out?
know.
It
Too
was
old, and it
so it came out in
there's a
2010
they're
and
supposed to
she
be like young kids, like 12-ish, I think, aren't they?
yeah.
And they actually cast in the TV show on Disney like 12-ish aged kids. And I thought that like especially with Percy, they did a great job because at times like Percy's just kind of like goofing off. There's one point where they do a cutaway to him and he's flossing, like doing
Yeah,
the
like
day's floss. And I was like, perfect. Like that's exactly what someone
mhm.
his age would be doing. He wouldn't be like immediately like I have to consider like all of the difficult things in my life that I have to come because I am an adult man named Logan Lerman who is going to probably
Well, and he
stare
was
at
at least like
Alexandria Daddatrio's boobs in 2 minutes and then maybe go to my full-time job and pay taxes. I'm like, okay.
so he was actually like 18 or 20 when the movies first started getting aired. So like fine, whatever, you
And
wanted
he's
to
kind of
age out
baby-faced,
someone.
I guess.
Yeah, so his wasn't as bad. Alexandra Daddario was 24 when those movies were coming
No.
out. And I'm like, she's not
And
16.
how old
Like,
was Grover? Like he was a lot older,
oh my gosh. Let's see.
or at least he looked a lot older.
Brandon T. Jackson. Yeah,
They let him have
he
facial hair so that
yeah, he was 26 when those movies came out. So
yeah.
like every time just imagine him
And
in the back seat going,
again,
I'm 24. And you're like, I don't even believe
yeah,
that. You're 26. So, like, you actually
yeah,
believed he was an older man, where, like, it is a button that Grover is hilariously just telling adults he's a
yeah,
24-year-old satyr. Like, great. I'm
when he's
happy with
12.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that is funny. Thank you.
And that's how it's supposed to be because, like, when you read the books, they are 12-year-olds. So
Hmm.
it's weird to watch the movies and be like, what the heck is happening here? These are adults.
I just don't understand. So, it's fine. Everything's fine. But I really enjoyed that TV series. Can't wait to
Yeah, it
do a
was
TV
good.
Tuesday on it. Um, And then another thing we were discussing, Laura and I've talked about this more off air, so I don't want to get into it too much, but I did watch the Quiet on Set documentary.
I watched that as
Uh,
well, based on your recommendation.
and apparently there is a new episode coming out soon, so they have one more
Yeah, an
episode
update
coming
one.
out. Yeah, an update. It was a very hard documentary to watch.
Yes.
It's It deals with child actors who we grew up with when we were kids, and kind of going into the toxicity of the workplace for child actors and child stars. um it's very eye-opening. We've both read I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette
Hmm.
McCurdy, so none of this I would say came as like a shock
Hmm.
um that things like this went down, but it is always upsetting to hear like how many people it affected,
Yep.
and how toxic those type of workplaces can be. And I think a lot of it, like, it's one of those things where I think sometimes certain jobs lend themselves to people who are uh y- y- probably immature, where it's like,
Hmm.
yeah, I remember I used to listen to a podcast where there was like an FBI profiler on there, problematic in different ways, but like he said something that was like, no one should be more excited about hanging out with your kids than you are. Like, you love your
Yeah.
children, and no one should want to be with them more than you do. And I was like,
Hmm.
that's really accurate. Like,
Hmm.
I love my nieces and nephews, but my sisters love them more. They're
Right.
children.
I think
I,
most people, even if they really enjoy kids, are kind of like somebody else's kids, deal with them.
yeah. And so I do think like if you are someone who gets into like childhood actor television shows, you're probably not the most mature person because you're like signing up
Hmm.
to hang out with kids. And I think like there's been stuff that I had heard about that wasn't on the TV show, specifically from one of the people who was featured on the documentary, where she talked about some of her treatment in Zoe 101,
Hmm.
um, where like the creator of the show, who like is one of the main people they discuss, not for any like sexual abuse reasons, but more toxicity in the workplace environment and inappropriate like jokes made at the expense of children that they wouldn't quite
Hmm.
understand. Those types of accusations were there, and sexual harassment in the workplace with an adult woman. But like if you're someone who gets famous from that, she said that like there were moments where he would bring her into the trailer and be like, this and this actress do not like you because you're annoying. And it's like, why would you?
Why the hell do you care?
Like, you're in your, like, I can't imagine caring what a 12-year-old thinks. Like, I honestly can't bring myself, like, unless it's like them being hurt, like, or like this girl's
If
being mean
somebody's
to
in
me.
danger or,
Yes.
oh my gosh.
So like stuff like that went
But like
on. And
petty
so
argument type stuff, like what
yeah.
a weird waste of everyone's time and why even get involved?
And so like the series is very well done in a lot of ways. I do think
Hmm.
sometimes we have to be careful with how we look at things because we have to look through added context that I don't think was always shown. I think it was more talking heads as a documentary, and I wish they had done
Okay.
a little bit more stuff about like psychology or this thing or this you know,
Okay.
and kind of the why. It feels like we're still trying to delve into early levels of like, let's all talk about what happened, and not the next
Hmm.
step of like, why, how do we counteract this, how do we do things, because like even in Jeanette McCurdy's book she talks about how like Miranda Cosgrove had really protective parents and had parents
Hmm.
who seemed to like know what to do in these situations and pushed her to be more protected. And so it's like, okay, well,
Yeah.
like if we are going to continue to have childhood actors, we should talk about the why parents might feel uncomfortable in the workplace, how
Hmm.
to defend their children, how to do those things. And it seems like
Yes.
we're still in the mess portion of it, which I think is a very worthwhile thing. But I
I
did
will say
wish,
though,
yeah.
my husband and I watched this as well, this documentary, and we were at one point a little frustrated with one of the actors because they were saying that like they had a lot of frustration with their mother for being
Hmm.
protective of them because they felt that she was the reason that they got kicked off of the show that
Yes.
they were on, and they kind of felt like, well, that was like the end of my career and I wasn't really able to pursue acting anymore because of her. And my husband and I were very much, because we're adults, we're watching this from the standpoint of somebody being like, you're a child at that time and you're still blaming your mother, but she protected you. She was
Yes.
protecting you. And the mother felt immense guilt for this as well. But we noticed that there were a lot of the kids mentioning, that their parents would just kind of leave them there, or that even some of the
Hmm.
parents mentioning, like, I didn't want my kid to be alone there and all this stuff.
Hmm.
But we watched actually after Percy Jackson, like the making of Percy Jackson.
Mm.
Did you watch that
I
episode?
haven't watched that yet. No.
One thing that we noticed when we watched that episode that we were able to compare to Quiet on Set was that throughout the making of Percy Jackson, when they were talking to the kids or when they were showing different scenes of like filming this stunt or that stunt, the parents were literally right there.
Which is what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Like that is
And they
determined
interviewed the
by.
parents, they
Mhm.
interviewed each of the main three's parents throughout this, but they were always like right there
Hmm.
in the shots, even because it was like they're there making sure that their child is doing something that is safe. Like they
Yep.
even talked to the kid that played Percy about his dad about like the stunts, and he was like, yeah, he wanted to do his own stunts, that kind of thing, but his parent was there to
Hmm.
make sure that he was protected, that he was doing things in a way that were appropriate, and that there was someone to advocate for him because he is a minor.
And that is like, I do think television's gotten better in certain ways. There can still be
Hmm.
toxic things. And that's why I wish
But
there
I
was more
noticed that
about the,
specifically
yeah.
about that Percy Jackson making of.
And that's what's supposed to happen. Like what happened with the toxicities was also a reflection on like a director who wanted the parents out of the room. Like there
Yeah.
was talk about how parents felt like they were not welcome on the set. They
Hmm.
had to be like watching through cameras. There was obviously, like, if you haven't watched it, there is a huge revelation about Drake Bell. His dad was an active parent, and he was preyed
Hmm.
upon in a way to get the dad out of the
Yes.
picture, to put him in an unsafe position. Um, and that is like horrifying, but that's what a parent is supposed to be. They're helping
Yes.
children. And I wish that there had been more talk about like what to do in the future, what to do. It
I
feels
will
like everyone,
also
there was a little
mention
bit more of like, let's look at the mess. And I was like, okay, but also like
I'll
what
also
happens
mention too,
next?
like something that I noticed about that documentary that like brings me back to that Kotaro Lives Alone. When like in Kotaro Lives Alone, you have the adults being like, yeah, we need to do these things so we can notice
Mm-hmm.
things that are going on with the children. There was a moment in the Quiet on Set documentary episodes where one of the other adults that was working in the cast I don't think he is someone who had any legal things happen to him or anything, but he was involved in the show at the time, and so they were questioning him for the documentary, and they said, "Well, did you know that this happened?" And he was like, "Yeah, but not to anyone while I was on the show." And they're like, "No,
Yes.
while you were on the show, it was
Mm-hmm.
happening." He was like, "No." And they're like, "Yes, it was." And so there were there need to be more adults in general that are
Yeah.
aware of different psychological things like you mentioned, and like more protections in place to have support for these children,
Yeah.
not just their parents too, where
Yes.
there's people involved in the cast or people involved in other roles at different positions that are aware of how to work with children or how to handle emotions and
Right.
psychology and sensitive topics, that are able to be there and to be a resource for people involved.
And I think that's, and I think like there are things that I thought the documentary did really well. I thought letting the people talk was important, and the way that they sometimes cut away to like actual legal documents I thought was very effective
Yes,
to tell the story and to reinforce the story. So like, to not make Drake Bell say anything he was uncomfortable with, they could cut away
I
to a legal
appreciated that they
document.
didn't share, that
Yeah.
they didn't make him share.
And like they do show it, which I'm sure they
Hmm.
got his permission for if you're
Yeah,
reading the legal document, but that
but
also
also people can look
takes,
it up.
yeah,
So
like, so it's, I think that that's fine. I think they handled that like pretty deftly and with grace. I thought the
yeah.
last scene was very effective. And I thought some of the discussions that like weren't just about the sexual abuse were very important to talk about, like using kids' humor to show like dirty adult jokes. Like, why are you doing that? Like, they talked a little bit about
Hmm.
that with like Zoe 101, where they talk about like what looked like a cum shot, and it was like, oh yeah, that is
Hmm.
inappropriate. Why did they want to show that? Like, that's not funny to like pull one over on execs to do
Or
this
like
type of
the
thing.
Ariana Grande potato thing where she had to like
Yes.
squeeze a potato for some reason, and
Hmm.
just like putting
To try to
children
juice
in
a
like
potato.
weirdly sexual
Hmm.
positions, and then when it was questioned, to turn around and be like, "Oh, get your mind out of the gutter. Come on,
Right.
that's not what it is." And it's like, "Okay,
But if it can be seen as that, why do it in the first place? Like, it's
exactly."
easy to just not do it in the first place. So I thought that that was an
I
interesting
also appreciated
discussion.
too that they didn't that they also pointed out like other issues that were going on too, where it was like there were a couple of writers who were poorly treated uh on different shows involved with this guy because they were women, they were
Hmm.
expected to share a salary, they were treated differently, they had to do terrible things to get a laugh out of this guy,
Hmm.
or he would like make bets with them, and they were, desperate for boosts in their career or for money, so they would unfortunately do these things. And I appreciated that they also mentioned the other toxicities that were present, around these shows that this
Yes.
creator was in, because a lot of times people are not a monolith. They're not just doing one bad thing.
No.
There's a lot of other warning signs and bad things that are happening. And it can be something that gets swept under the rug when you find out about one big thing.
Hmm.
And I appreciated that they didn't just make it about the one big thing, that they also pointed out the other very bad things that were happening.
And that, yeah. So I think it was a good documentary. I think there were ways to
Mhm.
improve, but it was definitely difficult to watch. So
Oh,
be
yeah.
mindful when you go into it. It's not feel good ever.
No,
But I did appreciate Drake's dad. I thought
I loved him.
he was very sweet, and I hope he is that sweet in real life, where
Yeah.
he just seems like he was a huge advocate for his son. And also, like, I was very appreciative that it shows positive representation of like a parent who was there for his son, and like
Hmm.
later you can tell that they've been through a lot. They both have, and like the
Hmm. They
acceptance
have
of
a
like,
fractured relationship
mm-hmm,
because of a lot of things that happened. And I think like Drake's parents are divorced, and I think that that caused a lot of issues in terms of communication between the
yes,
parents as well. And it seemed like his dad, we don't get as much of his mom's side of the
no,
story, so we can't really speculate on that, but we get some of the dad's side of the story, and it seemed like he very much wanted to do this in the first place as a way to bond with his child.
yes,
And then that was kind of taken away from him, and he was devastated by it because he then didn't get to see his child anymore because they were preyed upon, and
yes,
they a rift was forced between them, and it really changed their relationship. And then by the time that they were able to, reconcile and get back to a relationship at all, things had really changed.
yeah. So I appreciate a lot of the documentary, but I do think that there's always room for improvement, but it was very
Hmm.
interesting. So I'm glad you guys watched it. I hope you
Hmm.
were okay afterwards. But yeah, so that was that. So Percy Jackson and that very dark turn. But now to lighten it up, shall we get into Stormfront by Jim Butcher?
Let's do it.
So, this is Jim Butcher's first novel, it seems like.
Yes.
So that is very interesting. This is
Hmm.
beloved by many people. So, if you've
Yeah.
never tuned in for us before and you're still here after our very deep reading, watching, and or enjoying, Laura and I are lighter about books.
Congratulations for making it to this point of the episode. We've been talking for over an hour.
Oh my gosh. I'm sure we could probably cut something out and just put it in. We could always put like, oh, let's go to the end for a little bonus discussion if we
Yeah.
feel like people might be sick of us on the first episode doing an hour-long reading, watching, and or enjoying. Um, but Laura and I do riff on the plot, so please do not take this as we hate your book or if you beloved this book. This is just what we do. We joke about all books. We joke about books
Yes.
that we
And
love
we'll
the
be joking about
most.
this one a lot.
Uh,
Let
so
me just say, I listened to the audiobook, Hannah. It's narrated by James Marsters. Do you know who James Marsters is?
I did watch all of Angel and
See, I
a
have
lot of Buffy.
no recollection of
Oh
who
yeah.
this man is at all because I did not watch any of those things.
Yeah, he was also in a terrible show called The Runaways. It's a Marvel production that's on Hulu, and it takes the entire first season for them to run away. And I watched it when I was very unhappy in Texas, and I just
Oh
remember
no.
screaming at my friend like, "It's a whole season! They have not run away yet!"
Oh
Like
no.
the entire premise is this group of children run away from their evil villain parents, and it takes them a freaking season to actually run away. And I was like, why are we still watching this? That's the pilot episode. What are you doing? Sorry. He was also in the Runaways.
I did not know who this man was though. And when I started listening to this, this was absolutely not what I expected from an audiobook because the way that he reads this is either perfect or not quite right. Like I don't,
Oh, there's
because
no in between.
there's no in between. Because if I were just reading this like myself, I don't think that I would have expected this type of tone to be used. But the way that he reads this audiobook, I really enjoyed, honestly, because he does it in almost like a way that he feels like it's like lazy and almost like he's like, there's a lot of sighing that occurs where he'll be like, you didn't read the sign, did you? And it's like, wow, you're like pissed. Like you don't want to be here doing this audiobook. What's happening?
But is it better than famed Santino Fontana's performance in
I haven't read that.
Song? You need to get on that Libby list because it takes
I
a
know.
while. You need to put it on hold now, and you
I know
might
I
get it
need
in
to.
3 months because I need you to listen to that book so
Yeah.
badly.
Oh.
Um,
But I really enjoyed this once I kind of got into the swing of it, honestly, because James Marsters narration style is so different from what I'm used to. I'm used to narrators like very much getting into like the acting of it all, where it's like this voice sounds like this and this one sounds like this. And maybe it's because I listen to a lot of romances where it's very much like
mm,
high energy narrators,
yes.
but this is such a unique narration and I kind of dug it, but at the same time I think it's either perfect or not quite right. But maybe we need a different
Interesting.
narration style. But he his voice for Jim Butcher, I feel like he almost sounds too old also because isn't or not for Jim Butcher. His voice for Harry Dresden it sounds too old in my mind or maybe he just has a mature
Mm,
voice. But
he does have a
isn't
mature
Dresden
voice,
supposed to
but
be like in his 20s?
I think so. Yeah, he's
And
pretty
I was like,
young.
he sounds too old to be in his 20s. Like this sounds like an old man
I'm
who's
gonna
very not feeling talking to people. Can relate.
I mean, he doesn't feel like he has the energy of someone. Uh,
But yeah, there's just so much sighing and the
that's so
pauses
funny.
and things
Yeah,
are
he's
hilarious.
25 in the
Yeah,
first
he does not
book.
sound 25 to me. Like this does not sound I don't know how old this actor was when he recorded these books, but he sounds much older than 25.
I
Maybe he
mean,
has an
he's
old
he's
sounding
an
voice.
interesting person. My fiance and I have a joke about people who are sometimes like not the greatest because when
Okay.
we first started dating, I said something about like, oh well, Sean Connery this, and he goes, oh, Sean Connery never did a bad thing in his life, and we
Oh yeah,
paused for
you
a
told
second,
us.
and I go, Paul, he beat his wife. And so we say that about people who it's like, look into their history a little bit. So like,
Whoops.
never did a bad thing in his life. Just look that up. Um, but anyway, Laura's been reading the
Interesting narration.
audiobook. Interesting narration, but it does start with the mail being delivered to Harry,
Mhm.
and Harry has some bills due, but Harry's also a reader. I do love that he's like, I have a million paperbacks, and it's like, Harry's a reader. Got
Here's
it.
the thing. Harry constantly is like he's one of those people that this is like one of my biggest gripes with this character. He's constantly kind of like putting himself up on a pedestal where he's like, I'm a nice guy who treats women right, and I read and I'm smart and I'm good looking. But you know who sucks the most? Me. And I'm like, what? You just went on a big rant
Uh,
about how you're the best person ever. And then, like, a page later, you're like, I'm the absolute worst. It's no wonder my dating life is awful. Like, okay.
also, like, you don't ask out women, and you're like a
No.
25-year-old hot man, so like
And
maybe
then
you're
you make
fine.
comments to people like, why the slut act? Like, I
Yeah.
wonder why you're having trouble getting dates.
Well, Harry Dresden, he's a wizard, quote Laura, and he finds lost and found items, paranormal
Mhm.
investigations, consulting advice, reasonable rates, no love potions, endless purses, parties, or
Endless
other
purses, Mary
entertainment.
Poppins call out.
I know, like, what? Is Mary Poppins a wizard?
How many people are like, I watched this movie with Julie Andrews and I'd really like one of those purses.
Uh, so I'm sure it's like maybe pulling a rabbit out of a hat, but he thought that was too blasé for Harry
Oh
Dresden.
gosh.
But he
I'm
gets a lot
too
of
advanced for that kind of
but
crap.
this is a world where like you walk outside and there's pretty much a fairy flying by, but
Yeah.
everyone in the world is like magic isn't real.
Yeah. Yep.
So he gets a lot of crank calls of people being like, "Are you for real?" And he's like, "Yes." And then they're like, "Okay, click." And he's like,
Be like,
"Wow,
hey,
that's
Gandalf, want to come over to my birthday?
and so he sometimes has a hard time making rent because he is a private investigator
Yep.
all. Um,
And he lives in Chicago.
I love this part because he's like, I can never find work. And then 5 seconds later, he has two jobs. It's
Well,
like,
and he's like, I have the hardest time finding a job. And it's like, because you're picky is the
yeah,
situation. You have people that are offering you work, but you're like, I'm too good for that, you idiot.
So he's just reading his paperbacks because he's a reader, Laura.
Yeah,
And a lady
he's better
calls.
than us all.
There's a lady who calls it again. No one knows magic exists, but the lady is like, I'm not going to give you my real name because people who know magic have power over names. And so he's like, well, I kind of need your name to know who's coming. And she's like, you could call me, I'm just Monica. And he's like, no one ever gives me their real name. And it's like, how does she know
Okay,
all this?
Monica.
And she says that she'll be over soon, but she needs help finding her husband. And he's like, that sounds like a job for the police. Why are you giving your work away? Harry, you just said you were poor. Um, she's like, I can't involve them. It's a unique situation. Um, he also the phone rings immediately after he puts it down
And
after
it's the
having
police.
zero jobs, and it's the police. But at first he's like, I
Because he
don't.
works at the police too, and it's kind of another situation where he's like, bunch of idiots can't figure out a damn case. That's why they're always calling me.
Well,
Really?
also, so he thinks that the phone is on the fritz because apparently for wizards, technology does not like them.
Hmm.
Uh, but he gets called by this woman where he's like, this is Murphy. Her only job is the weird cases. And it's like, well, it seems like she hires you for all those cases. So is she just a
She
glorified secretary?
she's just kind of like, oh, another weird one. Sending that. I don't want to deal with that. Sending that over to him.
What is her job then? And then it's like, I guess she sometimes asks questions to the people that he doesn't want to ask questions or like can't
Yeah.
ask questions to.
I
But I
will say
did
there's
have
definitely a
questions.
theme throughout this book, though, that women are damsels. Harry has to save all the women.
Oh
Women
yeah.
don't get important jobs.
I mean,
Or
women
they
might
have
have.
the disguised important job of handing over jobs to Harry to do them. That's an important job. Giving Harry a job.
Well, also, women only use their boobs to do their work. Didn't you
Why the
know?
slut act?
I don't think I've gotten to why the slut act yet, but I
Oh
can't
no,
wait to
I
get there.
spoiled it. Damn. I
I
literally screamed when I heard that part.
no, but Murphy needs some help on a case and it's a bad one, Harry. And he's like, well, I have a meeting, so I can't come help you. And she's like, but you don't understand. I'm a detective who looks into weird things, and that means I only speak to you. Um,
Dresden, I'm not supposed to talk to you at the moment. I got the chief on the other line and I need to get this taken care of. Can you be down to the station in 20 minutes?
what's with the slut act, Laura?
Damn you, damn it, Dresden, you're the best looking guy I know and I need your help.
Oh, I hope you do that for this entire 9 chapters. So
Actually, if you do it the way that like Harry pictures all these women, they're like more of a Marilyn Monroe "Happy Birthday to You" type voice, where
mm,
it's like, "Hey,
adaptation.
Justin
You
is
mean
so sexy.
even Murphy, the
I
dowdy
can't
aunt
get over."
character,
Yes, all of them find
who
him
is
irresistible.
who made the mistake of being, I'm pretty sure, around Harry's age, but unfuckable because she is
Oh
curvy.
gosh.
Like, it's so confusing. So anyway, he's like,
Well,
well, I'll put a sign on my door that I'll be back soon, and then I'm gonna run and go help them at this beautiful hotel near my house, I guess.
yeah, in the Madison.
And so we meet Karen Murphy, who is the
Just
woman who
goes by
doesn't
Murphy from here on out, basically.
who's to say? She's shaped like a gymnast. She has shapely legs, but she looks like an ant. I was so offended for her.
He
I'm like,
basically he says something like she's kind of a tomboy or something like that, but she could have been hot if she wanted to. Basically, is what he
well,
says.
also what he describes as an incredibly hot woman. I don't
Yeah.
know what he's talking about because he's like, look, she's got legs to die for. She's a little short, but she's built
It's
like a
confusing
gymnast.
what his type is, honestly, because when he makes comments like that, you're like, okay, so he likes like waif thin women with no shape, but then later he's basically like, my problem is I love boobs. And like,
Okay, well,
what?
it's so strange because he's like, well, she's got these beautiful like Shirley Temple curls. She's built like a gymnast. She like
Hmm.
does Aikido matches on the weekend. I'm like, this woman sounds amazing. And then he's like,
Yeah.
but she looks like an aunt or a mother. And I'm like, no, she doesn't. You
She kind of looked like a
moms
cute
don't.
cheerleader if you looked at her through the right light.
But anyway, she's
But she's a
gotta
tomboy
have.
because she only wears pantsuits.
Oh, she never she's a detective. What is he
She
talking
she
about?
went to a
Could you
crime scene and she's not wearing a dress and
could
heels.
you
What the
imagine if you
world?
had to go to a crime scene in a pencil skirt? Like even in Castle, not the best representation for
But
detectives
still.
everywhere. Like she's always in a pantsuit and like 5-inch heels. So like as long as if you were like, well, she's always wearing sneakers, maybe, but it just sounds like she's a detective who has to be around dead bodies.
Also, the way that he like has to reduce everyone to their appearance is annoying because when he says she looks more like your favorite aunt than a hard-bitten homicide detective, what does a hard-bitten homicide detective have to look like? What are they supposed to look like?
A
I'd
man.
like I'd like to know.
A
Apparently,
man.
they're supposed to look like Harry Dresden.
Well, his coat came right out of El Dorado, and I was like, what is that?
Oh my gosh.
So anyway, they go into this very nice apartment that is obviously just like a fuck dungeon.
Yeah, I got really weirded out by this.
He's like, I go into a library that's obviously not for reading. And there's like a
It's
stereo,
not. What is it?
and then there's like a stereo meant for like making out. And
Yeah.
then we go into the bedroom, and the two people have been murdered graphically.
Oh yeah.
Um, during the portion of sex where they might have been orgasming and then their ribs shot out of their body, so that's a
Hmm.
beautiful sight to see. He still goes into very big detail into what the woman looked like, and I was like,
Yeah,
what,
and that's
to
what
the
is
point where
weird.
he's like, her eyes are slightly open and it looked like they were like seafoam green, and I was like, why do you care? She's a
And it's
dead
like she's
woman.
dead. Like, why do we have to describe this woman in detail? And it's almost like he's like, if she were still alive, I might have made a pass at her. Unfortunately. I'm like, what? Stop
uh
describing her.
and
Find the
so
killer.
he's there, and Murphy's coworker Carmichael, who is
Weird.
her
Also,
who is like her partner, who also
mhm,
doesn't do any of his job. Like what
no.
is he doing? Because it's like
Well,
no
he
one
comes in,
res
he's like, welcome to the Love Shack or something. And it's like, shut up. Who are
well,
you?
and so they're like, whoa, he like makes fun of Harry Dresden because no one takes a wizard seriously, obviously. And but like she talks about how she's ostracized for taking these cases, and I'm like, what is your partner doing then? Is he just blaming you for this?
We also need to mention though that this partner, like his appearance is also mentioned in
Oh, he
detail
is
that
gross.
he's a short, overweight, balding man with small bloodshot eyes and no chin.
Well,
Because
he
here's the thing that we're gonna find throughout these books. Nobody is as hot as Harry Dresden.
I could
You
never
know who
be
finds Harry Dresden the hottest?
Harry
Harry
Dresden.
Dresden.
Well, and then Carmichael like hates Harry's guts because of course he does. And he's just like,
Yeah.
tell us what you know, son. And
Mhm.
Harry Dresden is like, well, obviously they were murdered last night and it was done by someone who wasn't in the room. And like because the CD isn't in place. And Carmichael's like, tell us something we don't know. And it's like, well, you
He's
hired
like,
him to do
well,
your
he's like,
job. So
are
let
we
him do
dealing
your
with
job.
magic? And Dresden is such an a-hole where he's like, either that or the most incredible sex. And I'm like, shut up.
I mean, I'm pretty sure Carmichael does. Oh no, Murphy tells Carmichael to shut up because she has to listen to Harry do her job
Oh
for her. And so he
gosh.
tells her that it's one of two types of magic. It could be evocation, but that usually
Mhm.
means that you have to be like nearby to touch them. So it probably wasn't them because they didn't leave any evidence behind. Or thaumaturgy, which is as above, so below. So they do something to voodoo
Yeah.
dolls. Why couldn't he just say voodoo dolls?
I don't know.
um, and so he says there, he insults Carmichael a little bit more. Murphy asks him to do a spell to find out who the murderer is, and he's like, I can't do that, but I also can't tell her about the White Council.
I
That's
can't give away
foreboding.
all my secrets, Dame.
But she's like, please promise me you will. I really need this, and I will not pay you if you don't do it. And he's like, I have to figure out a way. And then he proceeds to tell us all the reasons why he can't do that
He's like,
spell.
I can't give away my secrets,
but
but
she,
I also can't do that.
but she does tell him that the woman's name is Jennifer Staten. She
Hmm.
works in the Velvet Room, which is run by a vampire named Bianca.
Hmm.
And she has power with a capital P.
Oh,
And then
Bianca. Why the slut act?
There's there's also a place called Never Never here, which I had a cross country coach who used to tell a story about how she said that she was once sweating in a jumper. She was from Britain, and the nun who was at her school goes, "Oh, honey, ladies don't sweat. They never never." And she goes, "Well, I'm never nevering all over my jumper. Can I take it
Oh,
off?"
that's funny.
And so Never Never always makes me think of a nice young lady sweating. So, but Bianca comes from she's like, I can't explain the never, never to Murph. Um, and so they think it might be a territorial dispute, but it's probably not.
Well, because it's
And
kind of
then
like a crime boss type
so
situation
we find out that the
too.
man is the like pusher of Marconi.
Yeah,
Why is everyone who is an Irish mob boss like Marcone, Falcone? Like, why are those usually
cones,
the go-to names? Why are they the cones? Why are we against cones here?
cream cone,
Um,
ice cream
so
cone. I'm gonna
uh
write a wizard story, and there's gonna be a villain, ice cream
named Ice
cone,
Cream Cone.
crime boss.
Uh so they kind of just talk about it and he's like, "Oh, so it might be something going on here." And again, Murph talks about like how no one hires Harry for
Hmm.
anything and how he's like short on money because people just think he's a wizard for
Yeah.
parties. Um, and
Also, can we just mention that Marcone's bodyguard is named Tommy Tom?
oh yeah, his name is Tommy Tom.
Let's
I
come up with a
blocked
more
that
original
out.
name. Come
uh
on.
So then he's like, "Oh no, I'm late for my appointment." And he flies down the stairs and he starts like running down the streets of Chicago, which a man in a giant coat running down the streets of Chicago is terrifying to
I
me.
mentioned this on the Discord, but the way that Chicago is talked about in this is baffling to me because I am from a small town, and when I think of Chicago, I think of a huge city where there's a lot of people around, and like some of the things that he's doing would be easily noticed. And the way that he talks about Chicago feels more like he's talking about my town that I live in, where there's very few people, and you can run down the street with a big weird coat and nobody's gonna like blink an eye because no one's around
Yeah,
and you
like
can get away with doing weird shady magic and stuff, but he acts like Chicago is just like, yeah, just run down Michigan Avenue, and I'm like, what?
I mean, in certain neighborhoods, like they're not as like people aren't walking around as much, but like usually there's quite a few
I
people.
don't
There are a
know.
lot of people in Chicago.
It's
Um,
it seems very much like if it gives me the feel of a mystery small town thriller type vibe that he's trying to write Chicago as, and I'm just like, I'm not buying this.
So yeah, but he's just like running down the streets of Chicago in a
Yeah,
trench coat, like a normal human, I guess.
just a
And all
regular
of a
human
sudden,
guy.
this it's just a regular human guy. And all of a sudden, like a car pulls up, and Harry Dresden, worst wizard in the world, is like, I was being followed. Like, and two men run up behind him who were running after him. Just like it looks like there was a chase happening, and Harry Dresden,
Yeah.
no idea what was happening. So we find out that it's John Marcone
Hmm.
and he is asking Harry not to get involved. He's going to pay him double his price.
Look,
Uh,
pal, you stay out of this and I won't mess you up.
but
I
also
won't shoulder
during
you.
this, he's like, I won't do that because I'm just not that type of guy. And I was like, or you're not going to do that because like a one-time payment does not equal how much on the
Right.
Chicago PD's payroll you seem to be. Like it's
Right.
not enough money. I just thought the economics there were
Yeah.
wild, where he's like, "Well, I'll just pay you double," and I'm like, "No, he just said
No.
how much the Chicago PD pays all of his bills. He can't do that."
He's like, it's
Um,
$50 an hour and you have to
yeah.
cover all my gas. So,
And so he's like, "Well, I won't do that." And we do find out in the scene that no one looks wizards in the eyes
mhm.
because he can see their essence, and then they in turn can see his essence, and
Yep.
apparently his essence sucks. Um, but Marconi or Marcone does it, and he sees like pretty much a wasteland of nothing, of like, this guy will do what it takes, and he's hard bitten. He's twice
It's like
bitten.
when he looks into like a black void of nothingness. He's like,
Yeah.
"Ah."
And he's like, this is really scary because he also looked right into my eyes and he seemed fine. And no one's ever done
Mhm.
that. I've once made a woman faint by looking in my eyes. And it's like, ew, no, thank
Yeah,
you.
don't do that anymore, please.
But the guy is like, okay, well, I'm not going to insult you, so I am going to let you leave and just like keep working with the Chicago
Isn't this like
PD.
one of his powers though that he can like tell something about people. I can't remember.
It's the whole
ex-
looking into eyes and seeing the essence. Like he can see
Yeah,
that. And
okay.
then that's why, every power has an equal and opposite reaction. So they can then see
Okay.
into his soul. So he gets out. I thought the guy was like a little bit too easy to be like, okay, you don't want to work for me? Head back in. And I was like, wow, you are a
This is
very
very much in
polite
my
crime
mind. It was
boss.
just like a we might need this character later. Let's set him up real quick.
Fair. I just thought I was like, that was way too easy. That man should have like, I'm not an enemy you want to have. You're gonna want to take my deal. But he seems to be like, all right, I get it. I'm like, okay, again, offer him more money. The Chicago
Yeah.
PD pays a lot of his bills. Why are you only offering him like 4 grand? He needs more.
It's Vincent
Um,
D'Onofrio is who I pictured for that guy. That
that's very fair.
that
Kingpin.
yeah, Kingpin. He's just coming in and saying that real quick, and then they're like, "Okay, we'll let you know when we got another Marvel show coming up."
And then he goes in, and Monica is leaving a note for him because he took too long. And so they go in. She says her husband's missing, but he's been dabbling in magic. I do like this part. She says he's
Mhm.
been going into the religion section at the bookstore, and not like those Dungeons and Dragons games. The real thing. He bought some of those tarot cards. He's like, she pronounced it like carrot.
I love
Pre-internet was
that.
a great place. And so she's worried. She doesn't really know where her husband is, but she's brought him quite a bit of money for a down payment.
Hmm.
And there seems to be like a little bit of foreshadowing where he's like, I should have asked more questions. And it's like, well, you did it because you wanted the money. And apparently her husband recently lost his job
Yep.
because he's been acting weird. So like no one really knows what's happening with him. No one knows what's going on. Anyone he was close with, he just like left. But they do
Because he's
have
been
a
gone for what, a few days now?
yeah, 3 days. Today's day 3.
Okay.
But they have a lake house up in Michigan that she has not driven out to herself.
Which was weird because it's like, yeah, you seem to kind of know more than you're letting on, and you haven't done a lot of work here. Okay.
And so she gives him a fake name for her husband, and he was like, you just gave me so many details about your life. I could find out what your guys' names are anyway. But he
It's
doesn't
like
say that
that.
to her.
What's that show where they're like, and I've just learned everything there is to know about you as a person.
I
What?
have no idea what show that
Oh
is.
gosh, it's a joke where it's just like, and now you've told me everything there that I need to know about you as a person. And then he moves on to the next person. And he's like, and now I've oh, it's Brooklyn Nine-Nine where
Oh,
they have that guy come in to help
I
Holt.
thought you
It's
were
one of his
talking about a reality television
no, no, no,
series.
no. It's they have that guy come in to help Holt on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and he is interviewing all these people to figure out who put off that firework or whatever, that small bomb.
Right.
And he's like, and now I know everything there is to know about you as a person.
Gosh, yeah. Okay, I know what you're talking about now. But she does tell him that her husband's name is Victor Sells.
Mhm.
Which what a name.
Well, because didn't
But
she say like George?
yeah, George. And he's like, ma'am, I'm just here to help. And he talks about like, I'm just
I already
trying to
know
make a
his
connection
name.
with her. And so he takes the job and he just a lot of these first chapters are him just being like, how am I gonna juggle these 2 jobs? And I'm like, I don't know, you talk about it a lot.
It doesn't seem like you're
Um,
doing too much at the moment, so
I
I
know
don't
you
know,
see
maybe work the cases.
just ruin your storygraph streak and don't read for a day. I
Yeah,
don't know
like
what else to tell you.
make
Um,
a little money, just work the case.
so he goes to a pub right after because he can finally pay for dinner again.
Hmm.
And this is a pub that doesn't have any television, and it's pretty much made for magic people. It's
It's for
13 of everything.
sophisticated magical people like
And it's
him.
run by a guy named Mac. And so he's sitting down to eat, and Mac's like, you've been followed, Dresden. And a lady sits down with a low cut top, and she's a news
Oh yeah.
reporter, but she's a news reporter that isn't very sophisticated. Like he
Oh,
shits. What is this woman's name? I honestly forgot. Susan.
Rodriguez.
Susan Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Obviously a very authentic name.
Hmm.
So she works for like a pretty much a newspaper rag. She
Yeah,
was
she's
like,
like a reporter for like the Chicago Tribune or something like that.
it wasn't even the Chicago Tribune. It was like called the Arcane,
Oh,
um,
okay.
which is it's a Chicago rag. Like it's not even a
Okay.
legitimate newspaper, but she acts like it's the most legitimate newspaper in the world because no one believes in
Yeah.
magic. So they're just writing about magic. And he's like,
But
sometimes
she's
they get
writing like
right,
weird like
sometimes they
National
don't.
Enquirer type stories.
Yeah, and he's like the only time they ever like made a point was when Milwaukee disappeared for like 2 hours.
What?
Uh
Milwaukee disappeared and we're not.
And no
Paid
one
more
believes
attention to
in
that.
magic. Like, what? Um,
Magic isn't real.
and she recently went down to the Ozarks where he was working on a haunted house
Yeah,
case
he was down
that,
in Branson working on a case.
oh, Branson, sorry.
I love the call, which Branson the Ozarks like super
Same thing.
close, same thing.
Oh.
But he, I love that he had to call out Branson because isn't he from Missouri, the author?
Oh,
I think
probably.
Butcher is from Missouri.
Okay, that's
So I was
fair.
like, that's definitely just a call out. Like,
And
where do people
dress
from the Midwest go on vacation? And where would there be a case? Branson.
Branson. But he did have a case where it was just a rock star who lived in Branson, Missouri, and was like, I think my house is haunted. And here he's just on drugs. Uh,
I will
but
say that that's probably legitimate because there are a lot of musicians that live there.
really
So
interesting.
there's tons of performers that live there, lots of excellent like violinists and
I
guitar
mean, this was
players,
oh, this was a
performers.
country star, sorry. But he said that like he gave the guy his recommendation, which was stop doing drugs. And the guy hired like a hack. And so she's writing a story on the hack,
What
and
a
she's like, it's
deep
gonna
bag
be
Dresden can be, where he's just like, you want my advice? Here's a tip.
stop
Lay off
doing
the drugs,
drugs.
you dirtbag.
So she's writing like a deep dive on the person, the hack who did it. And he's just like, oh
Mhm.
man, hope that's a good one. I'm gonna talk like him for the rest of my life now. And so
You gotta.
she's like flirting with him and trying to make him see down her dress, because of course she is. Uh,
Because all women love him.
and all women use their boobs to do their job. That's just what
Yes.
we do. Um, Too bad for the women who have bad boobs. Um,
Dang it.
and so she tricks him and uses her wiles on him to get him to accept a dinner invitation with her.
I
To
didn't even
which
know if it's like the way that I read it wasn't even like a portrayal of like her using her body to get him. I think that it's more, it came off to me as like all women want him,
I did not read it like that,
which was
but
even more annoying to me.
yeah, that is more annoying. But she like tricks him into going on a date with her where she was like, see you Saturday night. And then he acts like he's not an adult man who could just break off a date in that moment and be like,
And he's like,
actually, I have like two cases I'm working on right now. I'm a little busy. He's like, guess I have
she
to go to
flirted with
dinner
me
with
and let
her.
me look at her boobs because she thought I was attractive.
Well, and
I
you're
guess she
right.
had a job to do too.
He always talks about how much of a gentleman he is, and then he's like, but then I got a peek because I'm only human and
Yeah, I'm like,
hormones take over
I'm
after a
sorry.
while. But
Yeah, he's very much trying to like be like, I'm a nice guy who's smarter and more attractive than everyone else, and I'd never do a bad thing. I treat women right.
except
Quick
I
boob
do want to
glance.
look at their boobs.
Let me get back to what I was saying about me being a nice person.
Well, and so he like back was like, that might be a mistake. And he's like, I'm really busy. I was supposed to go see someone on Saturday night. Guess I have to go do something tonight. And I'm like, you can tell someone you're busy and ask them to move the date they asked you out on. It's
Right.
not that deep. Why are you acting like it is?
Probably because he
Um,
doesn't want to call her. He seems like the person that's like always annoyed with everything and is like, I can't make a phone call. She'd call me
so
if she wanted to.
he does go back home to feed his cat, Mister, who apparently is like 30 pounds. I was very surprised by
This is
that
a
weight.
huge cat. It's like a Maine Coon.
It's a fucking huge cat. I was like, why did you say 30 pounds? Like, my dog isn't 30 pounds. Like,
I really liked the Mr. being included in this. I thought it was so cute.
I do like that he's like, Mister usually climbs into bed with me. And I'm like, that is
I
an
know.
adorable little
I
fact.
really liked Mr.
Um,
Because I thought it just like kind of made him a little more likable, honestly, that he has a
well,
pet that he likes.
and so he does describe his apartment, which Sarah from Fiction Fans fame has said drives her nuts because he describes it as a studio apartment. It is 2 stories. That's not a studio. And the second he says it's a studio apartment, in the other room is my bed. Literally, a studio is all one bedroom.
One room,
It's
isn't it?
one room. It's one room. There's no other, there's nothing else. And he has a 2 story basement apartment with a bedroom in it. So that is
Hannah,
a
this is
one
a
bedroom.
result of someone from Missouri writing about apartment.
He
Just
heard that studios existed and he was like, it's a studio. And
honestly,
it's like, that's a
I will
one
say I
bedroom.
likely would have made a similar mistake because I am from a rural area. I don't know what studio apartments look like, and I did not call this out because I would have made a similar mistake, not recognize that studio apartments are one room.
It's just one
He
room.
he owns the whole building,
Uh,
so
so he goes in, and then he like leaves kind of right away to go out to Michigan, and he drives there,
Mhm.
all in one night. So he has quite the day. Um, but he sets up a
Split
trap.
the day.
He looks around the house and he's like, I can't break it in because it's bad juju. But also they had a security system. And I do like him being like, we can't do it because we have all these morals, but also I can't break in because I would get caught.
Right.
And so he doesn't see anyone there, but
Is this where
he
he's like catching, he's like setting traps for
he sets a trap
fairies?
for a fairy where he
Okay.
brings out bread, honey, and milk. And he talks about how he specifically calls the name of a specific fairy who is an idiot named Tutu. And he's like,
Toot
Tutu.
toot.
I actually really like this because he's like, Tutu has a beautiful name. It is ruined by the fact that in the real world, he goes by Tutu. So he does catch Tutu, who
Hmm.
immediately is like, I should have known. And apparently, fairies have a bad long-term memory, so
Yeah.
they forget quite a bit. Um, and so Tutu tries to
Because
threaten
he kind of
him.
explains it like a bug, basically, that he like is distracted by like light almost and forgets.
Yeah, and so he catches Tutu. He tells him that he needs to go find information about who was at the house recently.
Hmm.
And Tutu is like, I will murder you. The queen will get you. And he's like, Tutu, could you just go tell me? And so Tutu does agree. He goes to tell him. And he says that there was a pizza man there. And he goes, which pizza man? And he goes, the pizza man, which
Uh-huh.
I also very much
And then
enjoy.
Dresden's like, who was it? Domino's or Pizza
Or
Hut or who was it?
Pizza Hut. And he's like, I don't know, the pizza man. And he was like, and he gets really excited about it. And Harry's like pizza. Tutu is like, we love pizza. And he's like, I'll remember that for next time. So I did
So funny.
enjoy Tutu. But Tutu leaves, and then immediately a man just walks out of the forest with a sword and
So
says,
much of this is just like too convenient almost,
I
like
mean,
in
it's all
terms of
just
the
scene
plot.
setting, but it's keeping a sharp pace, Laura. It's all set
Yes.
up right now. This is all set up. And
Yes.
so there's a man who tells him that he is irresponsible because he said someone's true name and for summoning and
Hmm.
binding others, and it violated the fourth law of magic. And we find out that this is Morgan, because of course it is. And Morgan is pretty much like his parole officer. Um,
He's like part of the White Council, isn't he?
he is, and he's
Who
supposed to be
keeps track of
watching.
Dresden.
Yeah, because we do find out that Dresden's old mentor was a wizard who tried to get Harry to use black magic. And when Harry
Hmm.
refused, they got into a fight, and Harry had to kill him in self-defense. But using magic to kill someone is the first rule of wizardry that you can't do that. And so he should have been murdered for that, but they decided since he was doing it in self-defense. They said he wouldn't be murdered, but he would be on a tight leash for the rest of his life.
Right.
And if he has one strike, he's out. So he has to follow all the rules, even though he's Harry
Hmm.
Dresden, and I have a feeling that he doesn't play by the rules.
I'm Harry
Um,
Dresden. I'm a good guy who doesn't play by the rules.
but Morgan is like, yeah, you use someone's true name. And Harry is like, that's only for people. What are you talking about?
Hmm.
And he says like it's pretty common to do that to fairies. It's not breaking the rules. And Morgan's like, that's a technicality. And he's like, yeah, that's I'm following the rules. What do you
Hmm.
expect? And so then Morgan reveals that he thinks that Harry killed Tommy Tom and Jennifer Stanton. And it's because Morgan's kind of a guy who thinks like once you do one bad thing, you're the worst person for the rest of your life. So
Morgan also kind of sucks, but for like a different reason because it's like he's very much trying to frame Dresden because he just doesn't like him and he has a preconceived notion about him.
well, it's not exact. He does believe he did it, but like it's through no evidence ever. It's kind of like,
Because he's just like, you did something bad once. You
well,
did
it's like
it.
he seems like a character who's like, it's raining outside. Sounds like Harry Dresden. And it's like, what are you doing? You're just
Hmm.
stalking this random man who's a private investigator finding lost things.
It's like the guy from Fairly Odd Parents. My trophy, if I had one.
Exactly. And so he's like, Morgan, I didn't kill anyone. Why would I do
Hmm.
that? And Morgan's like, I'm gonna find out. And so then Harry punches
Not
him as
done
soon
with
as
you
he
yet.
he sheaths his sword because he's no longer
Hmm.
working on behalf of the council, and he tried to say something to Harry and grabbed him, and
Hmm.
Harry's like, no, you're making this personal, like do your job. If you're here for your job, you're doing work. You're not here to speak to me like that. And so then Morgan hits him right back. And Morgan's pretty much just like, I think you're evil. I think you're black. Like, da 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 da. And so then he goes home, um, and he's hanging out with Mister in his studio apartment. And he goes
All of
downstairs
their space.
and he wakes up Bob the Skull, who was very perverted, but if he wasn't such a pervert, I would like this character.
Oh
Um,
my gosh, this is a weird choice.
so Bob the Skull is a sentient skull
Mhm.
who was alive once upon a time but is no longer alive and helps Harry make spells. He's kind of like his knowledge book, pretty much. And Bob is immediately a pervert who wants Harry to bring him into a sorority house so he can see
Yes.
girls undress.
Hmm.
Awesome. Happy 2000s, everyone. And
Yeah,
so
it's really you.
Bob finds out that he has a hot date and he's like, well, I need to make a potion to escape. And Bob is like, or a love potion to make a woman want to have sex with you. And Harry is like, no, no, thank you. What if we just made two escape potions? And Bob is like, no, I will not help you if you don't make a rape potion.
And so
Um,
Dresden's like, okay, fine.
so
So I'm like, really?
he makes the rape potion. We learn a little bit how magic gets made. He has to crunch up a $50 bill. He's just burning money. I think Dresden is actually just bad with money.
That could very well be it.
And so he sleeps in the next day because he was out all night, and then he goes to meet Bianca. Um, he he talks to Murphy before, who's like, "Hey, don't go talk to Bianca," and then
Hmm.
he's like, "I will not go talk to Bianca." And she's like, "You're a terrible liar." Um, so he goes. His car immediately breaks down on the premises, so they have to call a tow truck.
Which
And
was
he's like,
weird.
it was just like, very bizarre, where he was like,
Because
"Hey,
doesn't
could
he like
you?"
mention earlier that he's fairly good at Am I thinking of
He's
the
not
right
good at
thing?
mechanics. He
Okay.
has a beaten up car. He has a good mechanic.
Oh,
So
he
it
has a
breaks
good mechanic.
down
I
and
was
he sends
thinking
it to the
something
good
different.
mechanic.
Okay.
So
I'm mixing that up in my
this
brain
is
because I'm
also
like,
in an this is also in an era where like everyone had broken down lemon cars in books.
hmm,
Like I specifically Stephanie Plum, which if no one's read those books, it's a private investigator whose cars blow up in every single
okay.
book. Um, but like it breaks down right
For
away.
convenience mostly.
Yeah, and he is like, "Hey, my car broke down. I need to call a tow truck. So can I see Bianca?" And they're like, "Well, Bianca's not here right now." And he's like, "Well, I have time. My car broke down. Could you call a tow truck?" And so they do. And then they're like, he gives them their name, his name. He goes to see Bianca. She comes in. She's a seductress. I
Hmm.
mean, she's a madam, so that tracks.
Yeah.
Like
Well, and like
her
vampires too, like also they're kind of known for being seductive. So,
but he gets let go. He has to keep his staff and his dagger at the front door. But he's like, that guy was an idiot. He didn't see the pure white handkerchief in my pocket, or the escape potion, or the fact that my amulet might not be a cross, but it still has
oh
power.
gosh.
Um, and so he goes in. Bianca's like trying to seduce him pretty much, being like, "Hello, Mr.
Hmm.
Treston." Um, but then he immediately is like, I'm here to talk about Jennifer Stanton. And she immediately goes to kill him.
Yep.
No further questions. No
Yep.
checking in on, like, what are you here for? You're a private investigator. Maybe I should have follow-up questions. Nope. Immediately, I'm going to murder you because I think you killed her.
Yep.
So he throws
Makes
out
sense.
the hanky from his pocket. Um, and he does say white hanky here instead of handkerchief. Why
Yeah.
did he have to shorten that? I don't know, but he did.
Midwest.
Midwest. And it has pure sunlight in it. So it transformed Bianca into her true
Hmm.
form, which is a grotesque vampire. And then for the rest of this chapter, I got so mad because he's like, she's ashamed of what her true form is. She really just wants to be beautiful. And it's like,
This was super annoying to me because it's like, okay, you of all people don't get to comment about how women just need to learn to love themselves
right,
and their true forms when you went on a one-page rant about how this woman was could have been kind of cute, but she looked more like your favorite aunt than a
right.
hot cheerleader.
Like it's just so bizarre how much of like a 180 he does on stuff. And so
Yeah,
they
it
have
gives you
like
whiplash, honestly, because I'm honestly like, from 1 minute to the next, where I'm like, okay, that was kind of a funny comment, Dresden. Like, I did chuckle at that to the next minute being like, Damn you, Dresden. Shut your mouth.
Well, it's also
Like,
the
don't.
belief that like vampires are people who like believe in the human race's expectation of beauty because
Right.
like I shattered the illusion. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure vampires probably want to like have sex with other vampires, so they're
Right.
probably fine. Like
And also, how old are they? And they probably are just like kind of focusing on eating and,
right.
maintaining
And they're
their
like
immortality.
legitimately their spit is like hallucinogenic where it gives
Yes.
people pleasure. I think she's fine. She can
Yeah.
look ugly and still want people to give her their blood. So,
Yes.
okay. Anyway, vampires are vapid. So he talks to her. She is like, I think you killed her. And he's like, well, I didn't. And she's like, fine, I'll give you more details that might be relevant to the case. And it's like, well, if you knew that, why did you think he did it? But she talks about this woman about who did threesomes with Jennifer, and she's like, you should go talk to her. She knew Tommy Tom and Jennifer,
Hmm.
and she might know more. I will leave her number at the door. And she's like, I'll have Paula bring it down. And so he goes out to wait for Paula to come back. It doesn't come, it gets phoned down, which I'm like, and he's like, Paula's too busy. And I was like, or it's just really easy to call down with the
Right.
number you're supposed to
Or it's just
get.
more convenient to
But the
do
paper
that.
says something on it that says regret. And so he's like, fine, I gotta leave. And so he leaves. And that is the end of the first third of this book.
We did it.
We did it. Stormfront man. Uh
This book, Hannah. Oh my gosh.
it's a weird one.
It's different.
I don't know what to make of it yet. Jury's out, we'll see. But I don't hate it. It's just
I
Harry
don't hate it either.
Dresden is a very bizarre man who has some different views on women, man.
Here's my feelings. Like this book is a romp, but at the same time, it's not a romp without criticisms. Like we can say, like, Dresden, shut your damn mouth, you sexy bastard.
Oh
I
my goodness. Yeah. It's a
but
romp. I'm having a good time. I read all 100 pages pretty much today. So,
nice.
and I wanted to read more. I've read past chapter 8, chapter 9. So that's good. But I do feel like all we got was set up in the first third where it's just like, let's go
It's a
meet this
lot of
person. Let's
like,
go.
let's introduce this, they're gone. Let's introduce this, now they're gone. Here is this, now it's gone. Like,
It's definitely
okay.
a murder mystery of like, meet the cast of characters.
Oh
Here's this
yeah.
person. Here's this person. Want to know who killed them? The front door guy at Bianca's establishment. Why? I don't know because he isn't that relevant yet. That's not who I think did it, but it would
No.
be funny if I
But
were right. Uh, so yeah, it's a romp of a book, not without its criticism. If you guys would like to join us next week as we do an even deeper dive into this plot, please join
and to
us.
Harry Dresden because he is a Dresden of a man.
He is the Dresden of a man. Let's Dresden this. Let's make this like Smurfs, where we just randomly use Dresden for things.
As
And
a word.
yeah,
Where it's like, quit using Brita as do you guys say Brita when you mean
mean
somebody made a little mistake?
yes. Pogo from New Girl. What's my Pogo? Cece, we just talk about how hot you are. Is it
Oh, I
baby
can't hear you.
Cece? Oh, sorry. I was just doing Cece's little baby voice.
Oh,
Um, I blew out the speaker.
it
Well, if
got
you
too
guys
high.
are enjoying this, please let us know. You can follow us on pretty much all the platforms at
We're on all the socials.
OWWR Pod. Or you can look at our reading list at owrpod.com, where we should be having more author highlights up on the blog soon, as well as
Woohoo!
some other things coming down the pipeline, such as our upcoming TV Tuesday
Yay!
on the first season of Doctor Who. We are
Yay!
covering that together, so please keep an eye out for
With
that.
special guests Hannah and Laura of our pod.
Well, it's our first one, so we get to do just us. But we have more coming down the pipeline with guests and everything. So please keep an eye out for that. And if you are so willing, please rate, review, and subscribe. That's a great way to get other people interested in the
And
podcast
share. It
and
really helps
share.
if you just share about the podcast. We really appreciate that.
And join us over on Discord for chit chat. Laura's a little bit more active than I am, but everyone should be over on it because it's a great place to just
Yeah.
talk about what we're reading, watching, and or enjoying.
Come
Uh,
recommend fun animes to me, like
that
Katara Lives
doesn't talk
Alone.
about boobs all the time.
Yeah, not as much on the boobs,
Yeah.
but a little more on like the fun stuff. Do I need to watch Jujutsu Kaisen? Let me know.
And next week, join us for chapters 10 through 18.
Woohoo!
Bye.
Bye.